19th, 2014 meeting of the Raleigh Conservation Commission. This meeting of the Raleigh Conservation Commission is hereby called to order under authority of MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, the Town of Raleigh's Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. I will now call the roll for attendance. Dave DeMonica.
Here.
Bob Garner.
Here.
Judy Keys. Currently absent. Sam Strike.
Here.
Kurt Turner.
Here.
Doug Watson.
Here.
Arthur Page.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum present.
Well, let's see, what do we have administratively?
We have administratively, I would be ever so grateful if you would approve my payroll request.
Just me?
No, that goes around for at least 3 signatures. if
No,
I
that's
could.
right.
And
For some reason.
my
I
hours
block it.
request, if I would possibly just need your signature and date on that. And so I'm not accused of de facto sneaking vacation days in there. I'm requesting to take Wednesday and
So you're
Thursday
done.
of this week
Yeah,
and Monday and Tuesday of next week off with your permission. That
that's
should-
fine.
Should not interrupt anyone's application.
If you will send me an email, I'll confirm that in writing.
Well, I did send you an
When?
email, last week.
I was on vacation last week, so
Okay.
it went right by. Send me another.
Oh, okay.
If you don't mind.
Not at
I
all.
can go dig it out.
I will
It's
resend it, no,
pretty buried in the email. but-
that's fine. I understand. So then, because I will be on vacation, because I am requesting vacation on Monday or Tuesday when I normally do vendor bill requests, I have prepared requests for reimbursement for some expenditures.
Where you going? On vacation?
Crazy.
Oh.
A couple of my wife's relatives are coming to visit, so.
That's
I'm relaxing by cleaning the house that hasn't been cleaned for company for a year.
Sounds so familiar. Your television, your wife, and your
This is right.
Yeah. We gotta get this cable channel. And then this is another request, postage for Wetlands Protection Act. Everything or documentation. Oh, that needs to go around.
Right.
A number of people, if I could have your initials on that particular copy of the receipt for that payment. Great, thank you very much. Staples had their 20% off anything that fits in the bag, so we got some ink cartridges and some label tape. Since of course they're probably one of the highest profit margin things they have hanging on their shelves, so.
Buy a
If you
print
get a
of
discount, it's a good thing.
price of the ink.
Thank you for the email about the Canadian Herald.
Yeah, that was extremely
Interesting.
enlightening.
What's that?
Sam asked me about the longevity of eastern hemlock. He was counting the rings, I guess, on a hemlock that was cut.
Yeah, I did. Well, we had the forest logged and there was a couple of them right by the cabin. And had to take those two down simply because they were leaning in the wrong, almost in the wrong direction and they were getting old. I counted the rings on one of them and I got 276. 276. And it occurred to me that that seemed rather old.
Yeah.
So Brent looked it up and turns out that's not all that old for hemlock.
Really?
It's actually kind of young that they can live to be 800 years old, according to the U.S. Forest Service.
I got a couple.
Progeny sheet.
What was the diameter of it, do you know?
Hmm?
What was the approximate diameter?
You know, I'm not gonna say that I'm definitely correct, but I'd give it a, it's about
Makes
2.5
sense.
feet through. It was by no means the oldest one that we've got.
Yeah.
We've had older ones fall, and I know there's still a few old ones left.
Yeah.
They're right along a lake, and it's a recreational lake also, and I told them not to cut the stuff right up close to the lake because I wanted it to look more or less like it had. So they're still there.
Wow.
It's interesting, I didn't know that. Anything else administrative?
Well, just briefly, just to tell you about a situation that developed in the last 2 days. I had a request from the Raleigh Light Department to allow the cutting of some trees on a common driveway at 248 Weathersfield Street. It's a residential property that actually was subdivided, and so you don't really see the homes from the street at all. It's sort of where Bennett Hill Road goes off of Weathersfield Street, very close to that. It's got a couple, I think, brick or stone pillars at the front of the driveway and goes in. And there were two trees, one suffering from a real advanced case of heart rot, and the other one, basically three-stemmed red maple that one of the three trunks was leaning, so it was overhanging the driveway, and the limb had actually been rubbing against the wire, and the wire had worn the casing off the wire, and the wire burned the limb off of it. So for safety's sake, they wanted to take down both trees, that even though they're on the driveway corridor, it's bordering vegetated wetlands, and there's actually a stream within 6 feet of the three-trunk maple. So Mr. Folding, superintendent of the light department, contacted me. We met on the site this morning because I was a little hesitant to figure out what to do, and we used our protocol for hazardous tree, where I wrote up, a permission slip, basically, but in this case, called for almost total removal of the trees. Mostly for safety's sake. The tree with the rotten center was approximately 16 to 18 inches in diameter. And so those trees are hard to cut and figure out where they're going to fall, because basically only the outer circumference of the tree is still solid, so you don't know where the weight's going to go. So instead of saying drop it in the wetlands and let it go back to nature, we basically discussed, well, do whatever is safe for you to do. If you can brace the tree, take the top off it, brace the trunk, and then drop it over into the wetlands, fine for its habitat value. But other than that, remove it, and no soil disturbance, hopefully it stumps out, although I doubt there would, because that would wreck the driveway. So, but anyway, that was handled with a site visit and permission issuance within a 48-hour window, as long as you don't count the weekend, because he emailed me on Friday when I'm not around, so
Right.
I couldn't, actually respond that quickly when I'm not even in. So.
But this request was from the light department, not the property owner.
Right, because it was a direct threat to their wires and poles going down the driveway. And in fact, with that one wire that had actually burned the limb off, there was definitely a safety hazard there.
Sure. Okay. Sounds like you did the right thing. This is the 7:45 item on the agenda. This is a legal notice of the Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, General Laws 131, Section 40, and the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. A public meeting will be held on Tuesday, August 19th, 2014 at 7:45 p.m. at Room 5, Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider a request for determination of applicability application filed by Barry Wilder for proposed soil evaluations for design of a replacement sewage disposal system possibly within the 100-foot buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetlands, salt marsh, and ACEC at 151 Stackyard Road, map 37, parcel 15. All right, someone who's here on this, and you are, okay, hi, and your name is?
Obscene Crocker?
Okay. And you are here on behalf of Jerry Wilder?
Correct.
Okay. So let's see, we don't have a memo on this, correct, Brett?
That is correct. If you would allow me, just because of various meeting schedules and other things, I had a unexpected 2-hour
Site
meeting with
visit.
the water department superintendent.
Yeah, right.
And then another
Site visit at 3 o'clock.
hour and a half, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so this isn't quite our usual protocol, but let's start by getting your oral or verbal comments, and then we'll get Bobby's
So,
response and so forth.
So as I usually do, just describing succinctly, this is soil investigations for the design of a replacement septic system. Title V inspection, I believe, due to the impending sale of the property, revealed that the current septic system was not up to snuff, and so we need to do some soil investigations. The property is on Stackyard Road, fair distance down, surrounded by salt marsh, also fringed on the terrestrial side with bordering vegetated wetlands. But we also have some other resource areas of concern. We have area of critical environmental concern, which goes to elevation 10. We are not being, so this filing, we're not being provided with specific topography or an actual survey plan. We're being provided with a sketch plan because we're not being asked to actually confirm legal boundaries of the various resource areas. But I just want to review the resource areas that are more than likely involved in this property. We also have land subject to coastal storm flowage, or the ocean floodplain, so to speak, if you want to put it that way. We have salt marsh on the property. Does not seem to be any channelized water flow, so there doesn't seem to be any intermittent stream channels or anything else like that on the property. This is probably actually, so for soil tests, we sort of do have a standard protocol of looking at them. This is probably the best example of why the commission should be reviewing soil evaluations. Because if you examine the plan, you can see that there's areas of this parcel that are still wooded. And 2 of the soil evaluation, proposed soil evaluation pits are in that wooded, undeveloped, previously unaltered areas. In what we might call relatively close proximity, or could be in close proximity, 25 feet to the edge of the delineated bordering vegetated wetlands. Now, the property has been delineated, the wetlands have been flagged, so when I performed my site visit, I was able to discuss, and that's why you see represented on the plan here, that there would, in fact, I am recommending installation of erosion control, such as a straw wattle or silt sock, in order to sort of not only provide erosion control, but because the work's going to be in a previously undisturbed area, I would recommend some kind of boundary so that when they're doing the tests, they don't get too close to the bordering vegetated wetlands. And the commission would normally be looking to establish a 25-foot no cut, no disturb at a minimum. This does not commit the commission to that particular possibility of that width of a restricted area later on. This was just to put some kind of limits on the soil investigations, which could proceed in that previously undisturbed area. One of the soil tests, the one that's indicated more towards the driveway turnaround, is in an area that's previously been lawn. And so there's not really that much concern with the disturbance activity there. but I have proposed conditions, which are our typical conditions. One of the recommendations, because of being out in very close proximity to the salt marsh, I'm recommending that an appropriately sized spill containment kit be on site while the equipment is present, and that the erosion control, as I said, silt sock or straw wattle actually be installed on bare ground. I'm working that into my phraseology now, since I've had a couple recent incidences where some folks don't understand that the silt sock and wattle needs to contact bare ground. It can't be over branches and pine needles because that won't form a seal. So anyway, so that's my recommendation, and I did provide a copy to the applicant of the conditions here. So the recommendation, if the commission would consider it, is for a negative determination, number 3, with the option of conditions as I just related.
Bobby, anything you want to add?
Nope, just making the property right,
Yeah.
making it ecologically sound.
The idea is to do these as soon as you can, right?
Correct.
Try to get the work completed this season.
Correct.
Yeah. Questions by commissioners? Any questions by members of the audience? Well, I don't see any issues with it. Brent, I think it really is a good example of why we review these, because this is a little different than you might handle a different set of test pits, but in this case, it totally seems appropriate. Anything else anybody want to add?
And just as a footnote here, more than likely the commission can anticipate that there will be a filing in
Well,
the
of course,
future
yeah.
for putting the system in, so at that point in time, we can look at specific boundaries of the possible resource areas that that activity might be proposed.
As well as contours, although it looks really flat in the pictures.
Right, but it's not. It's,
Yeah.
as most areas where there's any type of structure put in the marsh, it's a hummock or a mound or
Right.
or a little hill, however you want to phrase it,
Yeah.
that rises above the topography of the salt marsh.
All right, if there's no further comment, do I have a motion to, let's see, for negative determination number 3, is that what it is?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, option 3 with
Option 3
conditions.
with the conditions. Is there a motion?
So move.
And is there a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and all against? All right, so you're done with that, and we'll see you in not too long for part 2.
Hopefully, thank you very
Hopefully,
much.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's gotta be done. I see cesspool. It's not like we wanna keep that out.
Which is why I'm not buying it until it's fixed.
Do you wish the permit, or am I to send the permit to Dan?
Could I call you tomorrow? I'll call him on the phone and ask him.
You can call all you want, the answering machine will take messages. I'll be back from vacation next Wednesday.
Why don't I call him right now and come back in and tell you? Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Did you get the other photos?
Yes.
Other photos?
Yeah. That's our new 2014 pictometer.
What's the, I was just gonna ask you, didn't have anything to do with it. What's the little white line?
Yeah.
Contour line,
Is it? Supposed to be.
Yeah.
in there, huh?
yeah.
That's the hummock.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there
Must
any,
be all sand down there.
any set number of the contour? Or?
You know, I don't honestly know. I supposedly set it so that every time I do these, it's supposed to display them, but I notice that lots of times it doesn't, and sometimes I don't even think to go find out why my setting has changed. Yeah, typical computer.
I mean, it's supposed to have a number associated?
No, but it is supposed to, they are supposed to show slightly so that you can just get an idea and see that this is a hummock. It's a hummock.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, that's.
What is normally done in this situation? Is it usually to the
Well,
engineer or?
Well, because the application was filled out with Mr. Wilder's name on it,
Right.
and Dan was representing him, you, whatever, him. Normally, the representative would be here and I'd hand it to the representative.
Okay.
Now, I also will give a copy to the Board of Health, so.
But you could drop it off to me and I could give it to Dan, correct?
Sure. Yep.
As long as it doesn't hold it up.
No.
Right. It's just really however it gets into the hands of the guy who needs it fastest.
Excellent. He's away right now, so I imagine to me it would be preferable.
Okay.
Thank you again.
All right, thank you.
More color to this Hallmark. It's more color to these plants.
Well, when
Wrong
it's
time
taken
of
in
the year.
April,
That's why it's taken in April.
so the leaves aren't on the trees so we can see something, yeah, it's not, the salt marsh is not very colorful.
So you can see it better. You can see
All
the
right, this
contours.
is the 8 o'clock item on the agenda. This is the legal notice of the Raleigh Conservation Commission, in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, General Laws 131, Section 40, and the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. A public meeting will be held on Tuesday, August 19, 2014, at 8 p.m. on Room 5, Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider a request for determination of applicability application filed by Nancy Powell, Parker River NWR U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for a proposed salt marsh ditch remediation research project that plants Spartina vegetation in ditches within areas of subsidence, possibly within the salt marsh, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the ACEC at Stackyard Road, map 36, parcel 1 in Raleigh. Not so far from the last one.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
Yeah. And you are,
I'm David Burdick, University of New Hampshire.
welcome
and
David.
Working with Sue Adamovich and Nancy Powell on
Okay.
a project that was funded in October from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service money in response to Hurricane Sandy.
Okay.
And we're trying to restore some of the more subtle impacts on the marshes by doing some very small scale reductions in the ditching. We feel that ditches over time have some negative impacts to marshes, and as sea level rise increases, these impacts may reduce the ability of the marsh to grow at elevation with sea level rise. This town's surrounded by salt marsh, and is very lucky that as sea level rises, right now the marsh is growing as fast as the sea level is rising. So you're on a dock that's floating or growing, I should say. So it's,
When you say
some good things.
growing, you mean up or out or both?
Up. And out depends on what's happening. So it's probably, if the sea level rise increases rapidly, it will be having more open water, but it will be it will be growing over the land. But all the while, it will be growing up.
So your project is to consider whether what effect the ditching has on that process.
Actually, we know that ditching has negative impacts to the marsh. We don't know what effects it has on the process, but this is an experiment to see if merely placing grass in the bottom of the ditch and twine to hold that grass down so the tide doesn't flood it off out of the ditch will collect sediment fast enough so that it will essentially heal. It will accelerate the natural process of healing ditches that aren't really necessary to be there. We're avoiding ditches that are connected to a large pan or that have important drainage functions. We're just looking at ditches sort of where you have 6 ditches in a row, eliminating a couple of those ditches.
Where within the ditch in terms of length would you be placing it closest to the open water in the broader tributary or near the
It
end?
will
or-
extend from the upper edge of toward upland end down toward the connection to the next ditch down.
all the way.
And how do you do that? What's the?
We're gonna have a hand mower with a two-wheeled hand mower that will go out, cut the grass, and then with pitchforks, slide the grass, layer the grass in the bottom of the ditch, and then using twine and small 1x1 inch stakes, hold that grass in by crisscrossing the twine in the bottom of the ditch.
So you are only, in essence, to use this more common term, haying it and using the hay to hold?
Yes.
Oh, I assumed you were planting something.
No, over time, in our,
Expected this to
Oh,
see.
it will, yeah.
it will seed naturally
Yeah,
over
yeah.
time. And we aren't actually gonna go gather plants.
So what's the time frame for the study?
It would start late September after the birds have, the nesting birds have left the marsh and fledged. So late September, once a year for 2 years. So we do it 2 years in a row, and the first year will probably, every ditch is different and may add anywhere from 3 to 6 inches each year. So we're hoping to bring the bottom of those ditches up. Once they vegetate, then the vegetation itself will slow the water down and drop more sediment there.
Yeah.
Say you were mowing right along the edge of the ditch,
On the crown, in between ditches, on the crown where the Spartina
but not
pittance is.
necessarily next to the ditch itself.
No, because that's a little lower in elevation, those are more alterniflora areas.
Plus, I would think it would be more naturally able to seed if you didn't mow those.
Oh, that's a good point.
Interesting project. Are you applying for a permit, or do you need to apply for a permit in any of the adjoining towns?
No.
Just in Raleigh? It's just gonna be a Raleigh?
Well, it's
No,
a
the answer to
determination
that
of
is yes.
applicability.
Yes.
We've
They have
put a
determined.
determination of applicability to both, to Newbury, because I think
Newbury,
all the other activities are happening in Newbury.
okay,
And we received a negative determination
okay,
from Newbury.
all right. Brent, what would you like to have?
Well, first off, yes, there was a slight misinterpretation. The written request to determine applicability form, page 2, it was stated, the approach is to add Spartina vegetation to the ditch near the end of the growing season. Me, myself, and I in the office interpreted that as plant.
Live plants,
Right.
right, but we're talking.
Because
about
it did
plants.
not say, what it should have said
It's true.
is that the approach is to add cut Spartina vegetation to the ditch. So it did, so I don't know whether the commission considers that then misadvertising of it, but yes, I did put the word plants in there because of the
You
way,
mean in the legal notice?
in the legal notice.
My initial thought would be, well, this is less intrusive,
Right.
if anything.
Well,
And less of a disturbance.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I think we-
You know, the activity still, the activity is still taking place in the ditches, in the
Right,
salt
right.
marsh, you know, so,
But it's,
so in that case, you know, the resource areas are correct. The activity, there is activity taking place, it's just a little different, but again, that's because the description technically was not really.
yeah, but if anything, it's less disturbance.
Okay,
For sure.
but again, I just want to mention that,
No,
so that
fine.
as we
Yeah.
proceed, you know, there is a good understanding
Mhm.
of what the actual activity is.
Language is certainly open to different interpretations.
Well, yes, yeah.
I've got a
Thank you.
question, if I may.
May I just go
Yep, go
through?
ahead.
We're pretending that that you're reading my memo, so just kind of let me just do the brain dump here, and then if you don't mind, ask me the question. So the proposed activity is occurring within salt marsh, within ACEC, or Area of Critical Environmental Concern. It's being conducted in areas subject to coastal storm flowage. It's also, depending upon how you treat the bottom of the ditches, which are, you know, they may be artificially created channels, but some of them do maintain flow through them, so you might consider that there's land under waterways or water courses, depending on how you want to treat that. So the proposed activity is obviously taking place in resource areas. In terms of as I said today on our site visit, what's the inputs and outputs? So the input, the only thing that's being brought into the resource area are the wooden stakes and the twine. And the twine is going to be natural material, either hemp or sisal, so it will decay. It's not introducing, you know, plastic or anything, an artificial type thing. And the stakes are wooden as opposed to plastic or steel, so they technically will biodegrade also if they get left there. So in the activity of, in a sense, if I could just equate it to sort of mulching the bottom of the ditches. Some of the plant vegetation that gets moved around as rack or whatever would end up there anyway. Vegetation along the upper courses would die and fall in there. So it's, in one sense, not really doing anything different than the natural cycle that takes place out there anyway. There is this one aspect when the cutting occurs that they do have to bring in a piece of equipment, do the cutting, and then exit with a piece of equipment. So that, and that obviously, because it's hand-operated equipment, is less disruptive and less involved than the actual haying, which is done in tractors and larger pieces of equipment. That's my understanding is that it is only done once per year, and then access and egress to the site for monitoring purposes might be on a monthly basis or quarterly
6
basis,
weeks.
or,
But just during the growing season, so maybe
Yeah.
3 or 4 times. during the growing
So,
season.
I mean, those are the things we usually look at, is,
Right.
you know, what egress and access, you know, what's coming in, what's going out, inputs and outputs, so to speak. So that's all that's going on. So I was going to say, the only activity of concern, and I don't believe it would lead to consideration of an alteration, but that's for the commission to decide, is that going on and off the marsh with the piece of equipment. Whatever vegetation on the boundary that gets flattened down by the going in and out, my opinion would be that it's just going to recover and spring back. And the fact that they're doing it in the fall, when most of the vegetation has stopped its growth and isn't setting seed then or whatever, it's usually gone to seed by that point in time. And I'm not talking about the invasives, because could care less and crush the invasives. So I don't think there's a perceived negative impact. So if the commission has that same idea, that there's no alteration, no removing, no filling, no dredging, that therefore the commission might consider saying this has a negative impact, and that would be option number 2, saying that you don't need to file a notice of intent because you're not altering, dredging, filling, or removing a resource area subject to regulation. There, sorry.
No problem, sorry. You have an estimate of what the total linear feet are you're going to be doing?
Probably on the order of 1,500 in both Rowley and Newbury, so probably a third of that in Newbury, so on the order of 500 feet.
In Newbury or Rowley?
In Rowley, 500 feet in Rowley, and probably 1,000 feet in Newbury.
And just so I understood the discussion about other permits, you've already been to Newbury and gotten a negative determination from them, is that?
Correct.
was that
Yes,
just
we've been provided with a copy
Okay.
of their issuance.
Okay. So you're good to go with the project if we approve it? I can't think what other permits you would need, yeah. Any other questions by commissioners?
I guess not.
So it's a hand mower?
It is, it's a billy goat, but it's one with the big wheels, and it's non-mulching, because we want the big pieces of grass, if we can.
So it's motorized.
Yeah, it's motorized, absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Wouldn't a fishnet just do better? Sticking a fishnet in there?
No, I don't think well, those are nylon.
No, you can get them in anything you want.
Okay.
The ones
Fishnet
we
would,
use-
would work better, but it'd be more expensive than a
The
piece of
ones we
string.
use on the clam flats are nylon or plastic. They
Yeah.
keep
The one I
moving.
use is usually nylon.
Yeah, but
Again,
this
from
is to
Mem-
catch the
Memphis
clam
net
seed,
twine.
which is, it does seem to catch the, you have to keep raising them, because otherwise it does
Like
fill.
the sediment.
Well, I think from our perspective, as long as it's a natural material, that's the point. If some kind of netting works better for you than twine once you get to that point, I wouldn't see that as a substantial change in the
I
plan.
think Jeff
Whether
was
they're
set
tied
on the
together or
twine
not.
because it is just so inexpensive.
Cheap.
Okay, so we could do 100-foot length of ditch using a
Yeah,
couple hundred feet of twine.
it's a few dollars.
When you're filling, I'm assuming that you might have to fill the billy goat with fuel
Correct.
when you're on site. Do you have anything that might be used to, prevent any spills or anything like that? Like pig pads or anything like that?
We could use something like that.
Yeah, that are relatively cheap, from a standpoint of what you're doing. You can put them underneath the billy goat, and that way anything that might fall over the side would be captured by that. These pig pads are usually used on environmental drums, like the lids and stuff like that.
Well, if there's oil
also other
spill
ones.
all over the place, just throw them out and capture the oil.
Yeah,
They're really good at hydrocarbons.
yeah, they're hydrophobic pads, so they don't suck the water up, they just suck the fuel. So that might be something to consider.
Yeah, you may have heard from our discussion with the soil evaluation application that came before you, that one of our standard conditions now, when there's ever proposed work that's near a resource area that has water resource directly connected into it, or real close proximity to either bordering vegetated wetlands or salt marshes, that we will require that a spill containment kit be available on the site, and I think that's basically what Commissioner Delmonico is getting at, is that, if either carried in your vehicle or whoever is in charge of the billy goat or whatever, and lots of times we would be requesting that any maintenance, fueling or whatever be done as far away from the sensitive resource areas as possible, so like in the parking lot or up on.
That makes a lot of sense.
Or up on drier ground, so that if there is a spill, it's easier to deal with it,
Maintain it.
not getting down into vegetated or the salt marsh heat and stuff where it becomes problematic and even trying to absorb it or clean it up, so. But we're hoping that you would adopt those anyway, if the
Yeah.
commission is not looking, I believe, to actually put conditions on a permit issuance, but we're just making suggestions.
I think pink pads under the mowing when refilling with gas would be, that's just kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a no-brainer when you think.
Yeah, exactly.
But if we don't have it written down, we could have written it down, but we don't have it written down, so I'll talk to.
Yeah.
Pads are these?
Pink pads.
Oh, that's a pig pen.
Say pink.
Pink.
I have another question. Have you considered, you say you're doing this where your judgment says you're in an area of subsidence. Have you considered doing a control test at the same time in a ditch where there does not appear to be any subsidence, so there appears to be growth, to see what the relative increase may be?
No, we haven't considered doing that.
Might be interesting. Just a thought. don't have any more questions.
Anybody else have any questions? Members of the public, any questions? Well, it sounds like a fascinating project. I'm interested to hear how it comes out. Doesn't appear that we have any concerns about it, other than the ones that have been expressed about fuel. So I think I would need a motion for a negative determination, right? Number two.
If the commission so feels that this proposal is, like I
Yeah.
said, not altering,
Well, I
direction,
do.
filling, or removing, so.
Yes,
Perhaps we could get a copy of your final report?
Certainly.
that'd be great.
I will so move. I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Delmonico, second by Mr. Turner. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? And the motion carries. Thank you.
That will go to Nancy.
I certainly can make sure that that does. I usually also scan them and PDF them, and so since I have your email address, I will
That's
send you.
wonderful. Yeah, that's even better. But I know legally you have to send it somewhere, so.
Well, yes, her name was listed.
Yep, that's perfect.
That's for the applicant.
All right,
Now,
thank you.
Can we have this one back?
Yeah.
We put our notes on here.
Okay, would you please send me
Yeah.
another hard copy, because that's been introduced now and used at the meeting?
Oh,
It now becomes a public record?
Oh, you can have it.
Well,
It's not that important.
Well,
Okay, well,
It's easier to give it to us than to remember to send it to us, right?
Well, yeah. It's gonna be a big file.
Yeah, right. Thank you. And thanks for, you came down from New Hampshire for this, right? Yeah, thank you. All right, so we're on time.
just, okay, I'm waiting for Kurt and Sam to sign
Do we have the green card about our notifications?
This is the 8:15 item on the agenda. This is a legal notice of the Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Wetland Protection Act, Mass General Laws 131, Section 40 as amended, and the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, August 19th, 2014, at 8:15 p.m. at the Room 5 of the Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider a notice of intent application filed by Mark Savory, I hope I'm saying that right, for proposed removal of trailers and buildings and construction of a 40 by 125 foot metal commercial building with stormwater facilities, possibly within the 100-foot buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetlands at 56 Newburyport Turnpike, map 7, parcel 12. Hello?
Hi, I'm Liz Dupree from Clearwater Environmental.
Hi, Liz.
I'm here for
Welcome.
Mark, he's our client. This one, I'll use this just for a little bit. So what we're proposing is, this is an existing use right now. Are you familiar with the site or the property? It is a auto sale down here on the
Right.
lower lot.
Yep.
And then driveway comes up on both sides to another lot where right now there's vehicles, buildings, and the proposal is to replace the existing buildings that are there with a single building and use it as a contractor's building, basically landscaping contractor building. There is a wetland uphill out back, and this wetland drains down the side of the drive here. There's a pretty deep ditch down the side. All of this area, this entire driveway and this parking area is all gravel now, proposed to remain gravel. This is the 50-foot buffer zone from the wetland, the 100-foot buffer zone from the wetland. This is the proposed building with a stormwater infiltration trench around it.
So the stormwater from the building roof is infiltrated around the building, it's not directed over to the swale or anything?
No, it's not. There's no increase in impervious area. There's not gonna be any removal of any existing buffer, natural buffer zones, which are the shaded areas on the sides.
So where's the lot line? Am I reading this? I should just look on this. It's
Yeah.
this line, right?
Yes,
So that the swale and the wetland is on
the
site.
wetland is up top here.
Yeah, but it's on site. I mean, it's on-
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then the drainage swale comes down around. There's a collection area here.
Mhm.
And from the development down here, they have various collections on the lower level for the stormwater that they created with that parking lot. But there's no increase, there will be no increase of any runoff. There's no increase, and we're taking the stormwater off this roof and putting it in an infiltration trench.
Yeah.
So for the buildings that are already there, the structures that are already there, that are creating impervious surface, there's no increase in impervious surface, and we're taking away this.
You're improving drainage from
Yes,
the
yeah.
impervious surface. Yeah.
How many buildings are there now?
I think there are, and I have them on another plan.
According
Four
to
or
our
five.
aerial photography, there's 4.
4, okay, yeah.
And
Although 1 or 2 of those may just be parked,
Park buildings.
45-foot tractor trailers
Buildings with wheels.
that don't have inflated tires anymore.
And
So-
some, yeah,
so 4 of those are gonna end up being 1, right?
yeah, yes.
But there's not an increase?
There is not an increase,
That's plausible.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting.
Well, how big is this one? This is 40 by 125? is that what it
Yeah,
is?
40 by 125.
Brent, what would you like to say?
Well, okay, so just to explain a little bit, so the proposal is for construction activity, the erection of this building, that a fair portion of it, a third, half, however you want to say it, is in the 100-foot buffer zone. It is in a previously altered area, and just to give a little context to the resource area. Now, the Forest Ridge project is over here to the south and west, and that's where the bordering vegetated wetlands delineation comes down from when an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation was done for Mr. Coughlin, and the wetlands were flagged as we went up the hill. That was a number of years ago. So the connection here, the reason this is bordering vegetated wetlands though, is because the drainage swale acts as an intermittent water course, brings it down to the catch basin where it then goes underground in the stormwater system, comes down to Route 1 where it then goes underneath Route 1 and connects to bordering vegetated wetlands on the other side. So normally your wetlands has to border something, has to have some type of connection to a water course or a waterway. That is how the hydraulic connection is established here that makes this bordering vegetated wetlands, as opposed to just locally jurisdictional isolated vegetated wetlands. So that's the framework for the resource area. And the proposal, again, is to, this activity is occurring in a previously developed, previously disturbed area. Basically got the demolition of, as it's already been talked about, the demolition of some existing buildings, removing of trailers that would be used as stationary storage facilities, and construction of this one single building. So we conducted a site visit on the 13th during a nice rain event, and we're on the site, and so the discussion that we had out on the site was the fact that the topography here, you see the grade is changing because we're going downhill. So we're going to have
a proposed stormwater, crushed stone infiltration trench to intercept the stormwater, that at this point in time, I'm not aware that we've been given any details that this is either baffled or compartmentalized, and it drops approximately 6 to 8 feet from the upper side to the lower side. As the commission has had experience before when we, specifically with driveways on Weathersfield Street that come down and change the grade, we discovered that we needed to alert the engineer to this, because otherwise the capacity of the crushed stone infiltration trench is negated by the gradient, because any water going into it immediately flows down to the lower end, exceeds the volume capacity of the lower end, and discharges in an uncontrolled manner across what is going to be still utilized as parking lot and driveway. And so at the site visit, I brought up I made that observation, and I suggested that there be some consideration to possibly revising the design to, I'm using the phrase baffle or compartmentalize. There might be a more correct engineering term because I'm not an engineer. But the idea was to utilize all that capacity and not let the grade change make the upper end of it just useful for just the water all of a sudden being conducted down to the lower end. And therefore you don't get any utilization out of that volume. The water doesn't stay there in order for it to have time to infiltrate.
So you could just increase the volume of the downstream side of the infiltration trench.
You could do that, but what we saw done on Weathersfield Street was the fact that it was broken up and they put like an impermeable membrane or barrier or a baffle. In other words, they segmented. Because remember, the water's coming off the roof and going down into this. So it doesn't care if there's a vertical impermeable wall or whatever, yeah. And it just needs to be appropriately put in the right spot so that as much of the capacity of the constructed stone trench gets actually utilized to slow the water down and help it infiltrate.
Because the same amount comes off the roof and the back and the front.
Right, but it's just, but right now, if that whole thing is all open, it's just all gonna go down to the lower end, and it's not gonna be slowed down, and it's not gonna infiltrate.
Can I ask you what you're thinking about for the front collection and discharge in that case? I think it's a good idea. But we, there's a couple of ways to collect and discharge the front part of the roof into that trench, because that's
Well,
not
actually,
a
right now, I'm just talking about how the trench is proposed.
Yep, yep. And how the water's gonna flow through it. Okay, go ahead.
Right, so I'm just talking about what's being proposed on this plan of that U shape or whatever, and how to more efficiently utilize each section of it instead of just letting the gradient just have all the water go down to the lower end.
Yep.
The second thing we talked at the site visit was the fact that there didn't seem to be any provisions for emergency overflow. In other words, thinking that the capacity of that stone infiltration trench that we might have, well, not that I'm looking for it to happen, but we might have one of those sustained rain events, or as we've very recently seen, within 24-hour periods, certain parts of the South Shore received anywhere from 4 to 5 inches. Usually, even if it never ever gets used, you usually think of where, if its capacity is utilized in a storm event, where it's going to overflow. And you usually make provisions to at least control that or understand where that's going to go. Whether it ever happens or not, you just make provisions for it, because otherwise it would be an uncontrolled discharge going across the applicant's gravel drive there, which would probably rill it and gully it and wash it all down into his lower level. So it was, again, a suggestion was made that there possibly should be provisions for emergency runoff from this place, from this proposed crushed stone infiltration trench, in case its capacity ever did get exceeded. I kind of thought of it in terms of the baffles coming up in it would sort of be like the Titanic, not that that's a good example here because it's not going to sink, but that when
Gonna
the
get
baffled sections fill up with water, they would just overflow
Yeah, they
into the
keep
next
can.
baffled section. But at some point in time, if all of the capacity is utilized, when it gets down to
Yep.
here, the water's gonna wanna go
Confluence.
somewhere. Not sure that we want an uncontrolled discharge to the neighbor's property. Mr. Savory was proposing that he had an area over here that he thought he could possibly do a stone channel and then just do a slight depression in here as sort of a settling area. But here again, that's engineering, that's not for me to actually work out.
Well, one question I'd have is, that it has additional capacity in it, it's, required to have 210 cubic feet, and it has 275, so
Okay.
it is oversized. I don't know if that would be considered acceptable as far as, what you're looking for in that
Well,
respect?
Actually, I was going to make a suggestion to the commission. Now, you are applying on behalf of Mr. Savory to the planning board, correct?
Yes, yep.
In the planning board's review process, lots of times they entertain the services of H.L. Graham Associates to look at stormwater. And what I was going to suggest to the commission was that we possibly might want to just continue this and allow his professional engineering review to make a professional decision about whether the excess capacity that's provided in there is adequate, and therefore one doesn't need to even think about overflow considerations.
Certainly, that's a reasonable possibility, but it's an engineering question that we can't answer. But still, you're, 25% over, something like that. Yeah, 25 or 30% over, that's a lot.
What
Might
sort
be
of a rain
sufficient.
event is that designed to, I mean,
Up to over 100, well, 500, it was designed for 100,
Right,
so.
right. We're getting so many hundreds these days, it makes you worry. Okay, well, that seems reasonable, but it
And
also
the-
seems, from our point of view, I'm sure this is, if Mr. Graham feels that there does need to be additional capacity, from our perspective, doing what you were suggesting in that area seems like a practical solution that's not gonna be terribly expensive. Right.
And the planning board
I think
has
so.
already given us a copy of the application. They invite our submission of
Right.
comments.
Yep.
And again, I'm just trying to think of, they're probably gonna do that type of review anyway. And so if we just comment to them, and you also, say the commission, had this question, that might be a way of us not taking any additional time and not exceeding, our collective, expertise, because I'm not a licensed professional engineer. I'm just raising some comments based on what I've seen in other projects.
I think from our perspective, if Mr. Graham says, or the planning board says, that capacity is adequate, we're gonna probably deem it adequate. We're not
Well,
gonna
yes,
second
for
guess
sure.
his
Yeah.
thinking.
We
So
would defer to his.
We'll defer to his professional expertise, so.
Is the 100-year storm, is that about 7 inches of rain in 24 hours? Is that about what it is? or-
I think
I'm
it's
not-
6.4, 6.5, something like
Yeah.
that. in this area.
Closing in on 7, yeah. It's a lot of rain in
Yeah.
24 hours.
Yes, yeah.
can't guard against all possibilities, but following up on what Brent just said about recent 6 to 7 inch rainfall, in that storm, on parts of Long Island, they got 13 inches.
Right.
In a very
it's
short
very,
period
very
of time.
strong.
Isolated events occur.
We're,
Mhm.
we're reaching these higher limits more frequently.
Can I ask a question? Brent, you were talking about the difference on the trench of 6 or 8 feet over the 100 feet. Does that mean,
Yeah, it drops in elevation. We'll
Does that
say for
mean-
sure 6 feet is the slope there.
I've
For
heard-
sure it's 5, or maybe even, maybe a little less.
I have a hard time conceptualizing a building that is on a plane like that. And I'm just
The
wondering
building
how
is,
it's-
the building is, it would just have more exposed foundation as you go down slope.
In the back.
in the
The
back.
building will be
The building
level,
will be level.
but the
Yeah.
crushed stone trench
Okay,
is going down.
okay,
That's-
that explains my question, that gives me.
Otherwise, they'd have to bring in a whole bunch of fill, and they'd be filling his parking lot, which
Yeah,
is not what
yeah.
we.
And I think I
That's
think the
my
baffling
question.
is a good idea, and I think that it's a really valid point, and especially that you've been around and you've seen it, so, I mean, you know, I knew we were gonna be working on some kind of an additional detail, and, so the import, you've given us important.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
just mentioned as, again, we experienced with
Yeah.
a driveway that had a drop in grade, and it ended up being the practical solution, instead of just
Right.
making a huge, wider,
Right.
deeper crushed stone trench.
It's also,
And we have talked about a couple of options, but we hadn't talked about the bathroom, so that's good.
it's also pretty low cost. I mean, it's not,
Yeah, well, that's
doesn't
another
change
thing,
the
too.
basic design much at all, so. All right, so when are you in front of the planning board? Do you have a date?
You know, I forgot to look at my calendar before I left, but we do have a date, and,
I think it's in September,
I think
isn't
it's
it?
early to mid-September.
Yeah.
Would we finish discussing the other parameters of the?
Yeah.
Of the,
Yeah, I'm just, yeah, maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit. Planning board meets one, always.
Well, they had their meeting last Wednesday, and they set the date, so I was
Okay.
actually hoping, I was hoping they would tell us, because I didn't go to their meeting.
Yeah, okay, all right. So, with that in mind,
Mm.
what else do we need to talk about today about this? I don't,
Types of activities that are going on in the building and whether we need provisions for prohibiting interior drainage, pipes or holes or trenches or solvents and other
It's,
chemicals.
the plan is for having contractor or landscape type businesses use the building, park their vehicles, have a small office space. No drainage,
I don't
there's
think
no,
you
there's
didn't show
no,
any foundation drain, I mean, you didn't show any floor drains.
no floor
which is
drains,
what-
no floor drains.
From what you just said, I get the impression this is going to be like a farmer's market for environmental firms, where you're gonna have a number of them in the building and potentially come and go and have,
There could be up to
Workstations?
three, there could be up to three, but the use is, it's not a heavily, just the people who, you know, one or two people that work at the company would be coming in the morning, getting their trucks and going out and coming back. No public, no outside people coming in and out.
so trucks would be stored in there or brought in temporarily and serviced?
It's not gonna be a service bay.
How are you going to control that, in terms of washing the vehicles or cleaning them with solvents or storing chemicals?
Oil changes.
I guess I would think that there would be,
you prohibit it in your lease, that's how you do it. That's about the only thing you can do as a landlord, is you tell them they're not supposed to be doing that.
yeah.
So,
This is not in the zone two.
yeah.
This is not.
No,
in
I know,
the zone-
I know.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure, the zone two is on the other side of the road, down gradient, but this is,
Distinctly down gradient.
this site
yeah.
is not in the zone two.
It's just
Right,
everything's
So-
fluid.
but what happens on this site is gonna end up in zone two, as
Well,
likely as not.
But this site has already, I mean, I
Yeah.
believe he's already done private individual servicing of the vehicles.
I don't know, I mean, if you've been up there, you see that there's a lot of vehicles up there.
Mhm.
A lot of activity up there that, over the years, that this is.
He mostly sells them because I don't believe he has any enclosed service building for,
Right,
you know, for doing any quote-unquote auto maintenance or whatever. But
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me if he had to change the oil or whatever, if he did just change the oil or add oil to his vehicles. He's selling mostly used vehicles there.
Yep.
but that is gonna be, that is a different business than what would be happening up
Right.
here.
Yeah.
How many bay doors will there be in the front of that?
3,
Concrete floor
yes,
across the whole,
yes.
toilets in there?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the septic?
Septic is right
It's
up
right in
front here.
front there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Tank and trench.
What do you size a septic system for something like that?
There are parameters in Title V for different uses, different types of use.
Any other questions? Well, I think, from my perspective, I think I'm satisfied with what we're hearing on all issues except for the remaining planning board, sort of stormwater drainage issue from the roof. But I don't have any other concerns. So I guess we will see you again, but I think the discussion will probably be limited to feedback from them on those issues, and we'll, as I said, we're most likely just going to go along with whatever their recommendations are because they're engineering based. So the question that I don't know that we know the answer to is, when would you like to come back in? Because you're not sure of what your hearing date is at planning board. We meet every 3 weeks, as I think you know.
So maybe
So-
I could call you in the morning with,
Well, I was gonna say, my suggestion from experience is that you have to have the planning board hearing, they have to open it.
Right.
And they have to make a decision to engage the services of Mr. Graham to do the review. At that time, I think, is their process.
so this could be,
So, well, I would just sort of realistically say that I doubt we should have expectations that there'd be anything to talk about at September 9th.
Right.
But there could be things to talk about at September 30th, as well as the few plan revisions showing the baffling or whatever, stone infiltration trench.
Detail.
You meant, instead of just doing a whole new revised plan because of that, you may want, again, we're not looking for you to do a bunch of revisions for us and then have to do a bunch of revisions for the planning board. So my suggestion, again, and also because you can't proceed with construction until you have the planning board permit anyway. And so us not issuing an order of conditions is not going to be a detriment
correct,
to
yeah.
you making forward progress. And we would just assume, just go here kind of in parallel
Right.
with the planning board. And again, not to put you through having to attend a bunch of our meetings, do a bunch of plan revisions, and then have to do the same thing for them.
Yeah.
Different
We-
times, so.
If we
So-
go, yeah.
So I would, so if it's amenable to you, with your permission, a continuance to September 30th, and then we'd have a better sense as to what's going on, and if you did happen to get a review from Mr. Graham by that point in time, we could possibly make a decision. Again, we don't have to wait for the planning board to issue their permit, if in fact, within their process, our stormwater concerns get addressed by Mr. Graham's review, we can then proceed to make a decision even though the planning board hasn't.
Okay,
But this, again, this is, we're trying to work with you
Right.
and not have you chalk up a whole bunch of meeting time that doesn't lead to permit issuance.
yeah.
Right,
I
ideally we
agree.
see you just once more. If the 30th,
That's too good.
right. If the 30th turns out to be too soon, and,
Right.
you can continue it with just an email request. Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't have to
okay.
come here to do that, So, based on that, would you be agreeable to continuing this to September 30th?
Yes.
And just keep us informed about the planning board progress. All right,
Yes.
do I have a motion to?
Could we,
Yep.
have we checked in case there's anyone in the public who wishes to
I
comment?
think I did, but is there anyone in the public who wishes to be heard?
I wasn't sure.
Apparently not. All right, then, do I have a motion to continue this matter to the September 30th hearing date?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor? Aye. And that motion carries.
I'm sorry, who seconded? I didn't hear it. Oh,
See you then.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's see.
you have a butter notification green card, so thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, after reading the legal ad, I have the communication from the applicant requesting a waiver
Right.
of the bylaw fee, which might want to be the first item.
Yes. So, this is the legal notice of the Raleigh Conservation Commission. This is the 8:30 item on the agenda. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, General Laws 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw, a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, August 19th, 2014 at 8:30 p.m. Room 5, Town Hall Annex at 39 Central Street, to consider a notice of intent application filed by Jeff Clark School for proposed construction of a new playing field. Approximate size 70 feet by 180 feet, possibly within the 100-foot buffer zone, bordering vegetated wetlands, all at 14 Forest Ridge Drive, map 7, parcel 9 in Raleigh. And Mr. Coughlin, the landlord of that property, is also my landlord, so I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing. And Mr. Turner will be the chair.
Acting chair.
Acting chair.
I assume the current status is that there is before us a request to waive the local filing fee, which totals $3,600. Can you give us some background, Brent, on whether this is provided for in our regulations and in the bylaw, and what precedents might have some bearing on this?
Could either you or I read the applicant's letter requesting that into the record?
Certainly. Dear Mr. Watson and members of the Commission, this is dated August 6th. Addressed to Mr. Watson from Jeff Clark, head of school. Regarding the recent application for notice of intent that was submitted by Meridian Associates, Inc. on behalf of Clark School, we would like to request a waiver of the local filing fee, which totals $3,600. Since 1978, Clark School has been a community-based school. We are excited by our move to Raleigh and plan to be an active member in the Raleigh community. We will also be providing Raleigh resident families with an annual tuition discount. The Clark School is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, 04-2679411, and we would like to ask that the Commission consider this request for a waiver. If you require any further information, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Jeff Clark. And Mr. Clark,
I'm Mr. Clark.
welcome to our meeting, wherever we're all familiar with.
Okay, Mr. Acting Chairman Turner, you requested, and so I'll provide a citation from the Town of Raleigh's Wetlands Protection Bylaw. This is section Part B under submittal fees, and it follows the table that sets forth the fees, and it reads as follows. Fees are cumulative and are not refundable, period. The Commission may waive the filing fee, consultant fee, and costs and expenses for a permit or other application filed by a government agency, period. These fees are in addition to those required by the Wetlands Protection Act, Chapter 131, Section 40, DEP Regulations 310 CMR 10.00. So within our bylaw, there actually isn't any specific characterization or parameters set forth in regards to entertaining a waiver from the bylaw fee. Commission has made it a practice in the past, though, to give consideration to applicants, and I'll just briefly run through a couple of examples. The Commission has accepted deeded gifts of land of a equal or substantial value for waiving bylaw fee. Commission has also accepted the imposition of conservation restrictions, or what is commonly referred to as conservation easement nationwide, and looked at that in terms of its value to the community, as long as it has some component that allows public access. Sometimes that public access has been limited. Sometimes it has been specifically characterized for scholarly or academic field trips, where the property still is kept in private ownership, but has conservation restriction, which has some kind of provision for some type of public access to it, and also is protecting environmentally sensitive resources. The other limited application that I'm aware of where the commission waived the bylaw fee was for single-family residence, where there was demonstrated economic hardship, which was also accepted by other town boards, specifically the Board of Health, I believe, had granted a waiver to the applicant in regards to that. The commission did look at the specific proposal, which was a demolition and a manufactured home being brought into the site, and so it was in a previously disturbed area, but it was subject to the jurisdiction of the commission because the activities were in the regulated 100-foot buffer zone. So that is a brief recitation of what I'm aware of when the commission has made specific provisions for waiving the bylaw fee.
Mr. Clark, would you care to expand upon your request for a waiver in terms of the school and its nature and?
Yeah. So Clark School is the 5th school founded by Ron and Sharon Clark. Ron Clark was a Unitarian Universalist minister. Sharon Clark would start schools as we would move around. When we came to Massachusetts, Sharon was a participant in the starting of the Waring School as well as the Glen Urquhart School. All of these in New England came across as more of a, for lack of a better word, stodgy, typical school designed to send kids prep into Ivy League. That was not the intent of Sharon when she started the Clark School. The objective was to provide an environment for the students that didn't quite fit in anywhere else. So our students tend to be students who are dyslexic or have learning disabilities. They are commingled with students who are academically average, as well as commingled with students who are accelerated or have careers, i.e. actors, dancers, athletes, and they are not afforded the flexibility by a public school education to pursue something earlier than the public school system would think. I myself am dyslexic. I've been the headmaster of the Clark School for 9 years now. And one of the things that we try to do is take a holistic approach to education. Our students, again, tend to fall into the bungled and the botched, while we are once again a school where people do pay for students to come. We have a number of school systems that have chosen to send students to us because they are not a landmark student or they do not necessarily fit into their environment. So I hate to define this as a catch-all, but we are not a Brookwood or a Gus or an Exeter or an Andover. We are more like Sparhawk, if you're familiar with the Sparhawk School in Salisbury. We work with students who don't necessarily fit in everywhere else. In regards specifically to our request for a waiver, the transition was not a planned one. We currently, or did currently, reside in Danvers, Massachusetts, and it became clear that the property was no longer going to be available to us, which made for an exciting time because my mother is the owner of that property, and they are shoring up the scenario for her future or her retirement. The other reason why we really thought that perhaps participating in a waiver might be a good thing is we are trying to ingratiate ourselves into the community and be a participant in the community. One of the ways to do that would be to make a field available. We did notice we have two outdoor education specialists who come from University of Vermont and University of Wales, and they are very interested in maintaining a path that isn't necessarily as maintained as it ought to be for conservation purposes. Getting out there and using that path for cross-country, making sure that that path, which is set aside for public access, is actually obtainable and usable. And then also running curriculum for 4th and 5th graders, that's already established now with that path, for students to understand the environmental impact on that, the transition. We're talking about photography, we're talking about setting up a website that will identify this particular path. So one of the things that we want to do is participate in the community. When we offer a tuition discount, we did that in Danvers for our entire time that we were there. So that is just a standard process that we put into place, and we usually offer about 20%.
Thank you, that was a very interesting and useful run-through on that. This, in a sense, is precedent-setting in terms of doing something like this, and there are lots of different 501c3 nonprofits and other types of organizations and religious organizations that could theoretically come before us and seek waivers. In the past, I think we've done partial waivers once or twice in conjunction with some of the things that Brent ran through. Brent, what's the practice in Haverhill where you're a member of the commission?
That is a very good question. I am not aware that that the Haverhill Commission has adopted any type of policy on waiving local fees. They actually have a much more aggressive fee schedule than the town of Raleigh has.
Well, it's a different, it's closer to, it's a city, really. You talked about, or alluded to, if I understood you correctly, making fields available. You mean your playing fields that you're proposing?
Correct.
And what would be your ideas as to how you would do that, or what might you do? Or
The Clark's, the school's been around for 35 years, going on 36, and we traditionally do not fall well into the standard sports regimes that the other private schools participate in. Even watching my son run is an exciting experience. But what I will say is we have found a relationship with the Montessori League, which is more like a classic rugby series where you play your game and then everybody gets together and has pizza afterwards and spends some time together. So we would like to be a better participant in that organization. In our Danvers location, our field was 65 by 80, so it did not afford us the opportunity to host a game. We're thrilled about the prospect of hosting a cross-country 5K, which we can do with the cooperation of the two tenants in the Forest Ridge area, and use the path for that. But also we do flag football. We're a member of the Flag Football League and the Soccer League, and our high school students are looking to develop Ultimate Frisbee League. So our sports are not necessarily as traditional as town sports might be.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think that we're, again, looking at this from a precedent-setting situation, that I would think the special case on this is we certainly have the trails that are on the site. The subdivision was created for those trails, but there were really no provisions made for the maintenance of those trails. And it sounds to me like the school is coming to the table and talking about maintaining those trails, and that's a real value to what is a public amenity. So I don't know if there's, I don't know if too many other projects are gonna come to the table offering a public amenity like that. Just is in a sense of establishing a precedent.
You're not talking about adding trails, you're talking about using existing trails?
We're talking about using existing trails. I think it would be very hard to convince my two teachers to create a trail without getting pretty serious about what the what the environmental impact on that is, and if this organization feels that their involvement should be involved in that, I can think of nothing more educationally exciting than a teacher making a proposal and bringing students in here to see how that process works.
Other commissioners have some questions or thoughts or observations? The reason I asked about, go ahead.
Well, I was simply going to ask, perhaps the two longest standing members on the committee, have we ever dealt with a 501c3 before in this type of thing?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
Judy?
The application of churches.
The only thing I can think of is applications from churches for septic systems, but
Right, and
that
they
didn't involve any
and
fee.
they didn't ask for a waiver of the fee, they just paid the fee. That was the Archdiocese of Boston.
Yeah, well, that wasn't
Paid.
very, was that very much?
No,
Yeah.
no.
The reason I asked about whether you would be creating any new trails or anticipated that is because you would probably have to come before us in the case that there's wetlands all through all that.
That would be
Right.
awesome.
And it would also probably be prudent if you were going to schedule trail maintenance period of time, that should be checked with our agent Baselak.
Know that will come with children.
What is your rough average student body?
Actually, we have a cap at 164 students for this year. What sets us aside from other schools is we do not allow classrooms over 15. So we have made exceptions to that rule in recent years because teachers have come back and said 15 is hard to pair. So we now have some classes with 16 of it. You know, the other thing that may be the elephant in the room is we're a private school and we're coming to you and sort of saying, oh, we're a private school. Why should you offer a waiver to a private school? By definition, private schools make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. That really has never been the nature of what we do. We tend to run pretty close to budget, sometimes substantially below budget, by looking for the opportunity to provide a safe place for students who may not necessarily have that where they are now. I would love to be in the situation to feel that I can give back to the community immediately with cash and pay the waiver. We are a wonderful school that teaches compromise, and if that is part of the dialogue, then I'm happy to do that. But I also feel that we have something that we can give back to the community, and I think that has value as well.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but and I don't want to misinterpret what you said, but you mentioned 2 teachers. You must have more than 2 teachers for 164 students.
No, yes, we have. We have a staff of 32.
That includes non-teachers?
That includes a administrative staff of 7.
That's all right here in Raleigh?
As of next Tuesday, that's all right here in Raleigh.
For the commission's consideration, whatever you decide, I think there's 2 things that need to be dealt with. Number one is, what is the vehicle that if you do wish to make some kind of agreement, what is the proper legal vehicle for that agreement to be expressed in, be it a memorandum of understanding or something like that, some type of letter of commitment if you're
considering this waiver request, and that it somehow either be enforceable or have some type of negotiation aspect to it, because as much as we can anticipate the future sitting in the room right now, we always know that it changes later on, and we don't want to hamstring anybody by certain percentage discounts or considerations on tuition or something like that. Number two, there would be value to the community with a group such as a friends group that makes a commitment to trail maintenance and establishment into that conservation restricted area, as well as the fact that Mr. Coughlin's property borders town-owned, conservation managed conservation land that is on the backside of Capco Crane area. And so having established and maintained trail access to town-owned conservation land has some value there, but again, the commission would be well advised to seek to see that the property owner makes some type of statement that it would allow the school and your, what I want to say, your student body, just as the town is always very wary and needs liability waivers for any trail work to occur on municipal property, there also might be that. We don't want to commit you to performing trail work on somebody else's property and expose some type of liability considerations there, so that needs to be worked out. But I did want to say that the commission and Gateway 2 has not had any type of maintenance effort, and the trails that were mapped out that came along with the commitment of the conservation restriction that was given in 2 stages to the town, its public accessibility would be greatly enhanced by having some effort made at doing some relatively common maintenance, such as pruning or whatever. And we have trail markers that the commission made a commitment to buy that, again, could be provided and put to useful purpose as long as those considerations are worked out, if the commission is considering this.
Our school is covered by liability insurance, which falls under field trip insurance. So barring any other areas we are covered, it wouldn't be a burden on the town.
I was actually thinking of the burden on Mr. Coughlin.
We are fortunate.
Oh.
We're fortunate tonight to have the Gateway 2 manager of operations, among other things, with us, Mr. Coughlin, tonight. Do you have some thoughts and views you care to express on this subject?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. John Coughlin. We have very actively seeked and worked to put the Clark School in up there. From our own end, we have made financial considerations to put them in. I think, and I don't think I know it's going to be a real attribute for the town of Raleigh. And I have walked the trails, I've been involved in it with up-and-coming construction projects that we're doing up there, and they are in need of a lot of work. I think the caveat that Jeff is putting out, having his people and his organization get involved in it, number one, would be great, and they would get more use out of it. They would be more use if they were maintained. The other thing that we would propose, and I've discussed it in detail with my sons, with the energy level that's come on with the Clark School, is even increasing those trails, so that they could be further enlarged to be beneficial to the school and to anybody in the town that wants to use them. So we would support it 100%. I know if we're going to get involved in trail maintenance, we're going to have to go over, because I have the uncanny ability of cutting things down in areas where I shouldn't be cutting them down over a few by
Once in a
illustrious
while.
granite. Right, so what we would have to do is get a clearly delineated program to do that, and if we wanted to increase the trails, I would have no problem with that at all.
My caveat would be, I would really appreciate that that be an academic piece that we put together and that our students make those proposals in conjunction with working with Mr. Coughlin.
The other issue I would put up, and I'm talking for you, Jeff, but the fields would be up there. You would not be using those fields 7 days a week, am I correct?
We would not, our particular Montessori League does not do weekend sports events, so other than graduation, etc., you know, it wouldn't necessarily be that. So making those available to the town. I know Danvers has a multi-field soccer event that requires of St. Mary's, St. John's Prep, Danvers High School. If the town comes to a point, if they don't already, excuse my ignorance, needs additional, then fantastic. We can
Well, what I
participate.
was thinking, it would, if the field is not being used on a Sunday afternoon, the trails are up there, this, and I'm speaking for you now, but I don't think you'd have an objection if there was a town sports organization that wanted to do something to use the field on a Sunday. Would you have a problem with that?
No, not at all.
And that would be, I think, very beneficial to the community. Whatever sports organizations, youth sports organizations you're developing, it would give another field that they'd have an opportunity to use.
Anybody else in the audience have any thoughts on this? Thank you for your thoughts, I appreciate that. It was very helpful, I think.
Thank you, Kurt.
This is not an easy question because it is probably the first time that it's directly come up in this manner, but one thing I'd like to throw out on the table is a possibility and see how the rest of the commissioners and the other people present react to it. Is you talked about an annual tuition discount of 20% for Raleigh resident families, and one thing we might consider in conjunction with the things that have been offered here would be a 20% waiver of the filing fee.
May I comment on that?
Pardon?
20% waiver of the filing fee would be basically a 20% waiver of a tuition, so that seems a little bit more than would make sense in terms of, you know.
20% waiver is $700.
Yeah.
I'd be reluctant to go all the way on something, but anyway, I'd like to get perspectives of the other commissioners. Let's go around the table.
Do we need any consultation by town council on this? Is this something that can be researched and resolved from that end?
The bylaw, as Brent read it, seemed to say that we...
I read the bylaw, and it really only talks about a waiver for government entities. Now, that, again, that doesn't, so the commission has deliberated on a few of these questions before, as I said, and, you know, yes, you could request to consult town council, but again, I think what you're gonna hear is the same thing that I've advised before, that you are setting precedent, that you must be very careful in that you make sure that you weigh all the specifics to it, because otherwise you then just make it carte blanche for some particular category that hasn't been enumerated in the bylaw and therefore passed at town meeting by the citizens. And so, in the past, the commission has always been cognizant of the fact that our bylaw fees go into the general fund for the operation of the town. And therefore, if you are going to look and make a consideration of possible waiver or adjustment of a bylaw fee, what is the value that then is being offered to the community as a whole? And is that value being offered to the community as a whole, or does it only go to a narrow subset of the citizenry? So I realize the commission has been very conscientious before and looked at any consideration such as this and weighed it, which is why I mentioned the public accessibility factor in conservation restrictions.
I have one other suggestion. That
Well,
we're-
may I offer one other
Please,
thing, and
sure.
it's only because recently I've been consulted quite a bit by the Board of Selectmen in regards to the pursuit of evaluating either municipal properties or properties that have the potential for the town to use as recreational fields. So I know that right now I can directly speak to the fact that there is a need in the town of Raleigh for playing fields. I'm not 100% sure, I can't tell you the specificity of that, but I can tell you that I was asked to walk a property with one of the members of the Board of Selectmen and a member from the Parks and Recreation Committee, specifically looking at possible soccer field creation. And I understand only from a limited education I got in the city of Haverhill, that there are different size soccer fields depending upon the age group
Yes.
of the student body. And so not all soccer fields are the same thing. Like if you say football field, you know a certain size of a football field, but with soccer fields, there's apparently different gradations. And so if the commission is thinking of the school's offer to the town for the utilization of the field, I would say that that would probably meet what has been expressed to me as being a very current consideration of the town.
That would be the youngest size, the Pee Wee soccer. But what I was going to propose, one of the things that I will say to families that have been really damaged by their previous academic experiences, don't trust me, let me prove it to you. So what I would ask is perhaps Clark School can make the suggestion that again, after there's approval for the field, perhaps we set a time to meet perhaps in a year, and you temporarily waive the fee for a year, and Clark School will acquiesce to the decision as to whether or not we have brought value to the community or not at that time.
Say the size of your playing field would be consistent with what would be called a Pee-wee playing field?
It would be the youngest populations, anywhere from kindergarten through second grade, third grade.
I don't even know if we have a league in town.
Yeah.
They split out of the farthest nearest field up into, they got like 6 teams playing on it.
So we do have a
Yeah,
Pee-wee
for that.
Harris and Pine Grove do the same.
Brett, you familiar with the trails up there?
Well, to a certain extent, I've having wandered over them during the permitting process, but they were definitely not in a.
What is the mileage or footage, how big are the trails?
Oh, gosh.
Several miles?
Well,
Overall, no, it's not several miles, but there is, the lot is 100 acres, and it's bisected by, they're all old woods roads, and the site is bisected.
That's a substantial, if they're gonna maintain it,
It's huge.
that's some
well,
expense right there.
yeah, but, well, I'm gonna project here. The Woods Road that is directly next to where the school is going right now has grown in quite a bit over the last couple of years. Mostly in need of just, a bunch of aggressive pruning, so to speak. That then connects into the drive that comes, the cul-de-sac drive or spur road that goes down to the Catco Crane organization. And then has direct access to a stormwater basin that is the size of a football field, which if there was, again, if mowing equipment is involved and just the grasses on the top of the basin berm were mowed, you could probably get a good half-mile
Easy.
trail there,
Yeah.
just going there and then walking around the perimeter.
The trail
of
from
that
the site
basin.
to that basin you mentioned is about 1,500 feet.
Yeah.
So just going down to that basin and back is over half a mile.
Yeah.
So that would be some cost right there. I don't know if it was, because I wasn't
Well-
with you people, but when you wrote it in on the institution to take care of the beavers
Yeah.
forever, that was, so now they have that. So I don't know if,
Right, well, yeah,
Our
okay.
trail objective is to develop a full 5K run that would include the trail and then onto the road. We would announce to our neighbors when we were doing those things and then come down, and it may require another loop. I think it's impossible to think that the two teachers that I'm talking about will not mission creep, as I know they do in so many other areas. So I don't have any concerns about additional paths or expansion. Again, with the opportunity for proposal, we want students to understand what this process is.
Yeah, it would probably be cleaner just to have a memorandum of understanding if you were gonna do that, so then there's a kind of check-in, and then if permitting is needed, it would probably confuse things to issue one permit and mandate maintenance and care of trails that don't presently exist, or, that.
that's your problem.
Well, I'm just saying, we all make an attempt, number one, first off, to make what paperwork we do generate be practical and clear and able to be executed by both the permittee as well as by the commission in terms of its job of regulating things. And we probably wouldn't be getting clarity if we just attached a commission to a permit for this creation of this field that then went outside the work project site. I think, and my suggestion would be, again, a memorandum of understanding. And so then you could deal with things such as deciding if there's going to be other trails and their creation.
Well, excuse me for interrupting, but the existing trails, even though they're overgrown right now since 5-6 years ago when we did it, those are pretty well clearly defined.
Yeah, they are.
Am I correct, Charlie?
No, definitely.
So, I mean, the clear intent was back, and time goes by quickly, 5 or 6 years ago, was to have public access, which they're marked with that, so
Yeah.
anybody from the town of Raleigh or anybody could come up and walk the trails, and it's a real beautiful spot. So we know that. I think what's transpired, they do get infrequent use now. With Clark being up there, there are people using it, number one, and maintaining what exists right now and what has already been permitted.
Correct.
And with maybe a walkthrough with somebody like yourself, okay, and some taping going in, this is as far as you can clear, and that's the trail. We could get the existing trails through Clark back in shape, and get the Clark School will definitely use them, and then hopefully we could get more people in the community to use them.
Frankly, I think if the trails were just, because they haven't been utilized over the last 5-10 years, they've started to overgrow, but they're very clearly trails, and they're all woods roads. They have a very good gravel base to them. They're not muddy messes. I honestly don't think you need to do much but clear the vegetation which has taken hold. And that goes for the whole site.
Is it still
And then-
passable
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
right now?
And if you were to do that, and do that vegetative clearing, and then utilize the trails, I think you could do it with very little maintenance. You know.
Those trails are still used every weekend up there. There's people that bring their dogs up there, now whether they're from the town of Raleigh or not, I'm up there all the time, the cars are parked, they get out, they walk their dogs, they run them up the trails, but they're not getting a lot of use.
They're not getting a lot.
They're not getting very deep into
Well,
the
that's,
trails.
yeah, the buckthorn's growing in on it. It was a stroke of genius anyway. Charlie and I were approached by someone wanting to know where the trail went.
Yeah.
And to use it at this site visit. but-
Mr. Coughlin, you comfortable with the idea of 5K run going through your trails and your roads?
Most definitely, most
Okay.
definitely. I think any use, that's what it's meant to be there for, and the more we can use it and utilize it, I think it's a great thing. As long as people pick up their rubbish and their trash, and that is all
And their
cleaned up
dog
along
poops.
the way. And their dog poop, and that's why, I see the people up there on Sundays walking their dog, and I say, where's your plastic bags? And so they
right.
throw them out.
Well, let me ask a procedural question of Brent here. Can we move to the substance of this application without resolving the this point in time, the fee matter?
I would say yes, as long as you take a definitive motion to continue it to a future meeting, whatever, not, I think it has to be appropriately dealt with.
But that-
Either by a motion to continue to the next meeting, or seeking some sort of, if you want, Mr. Clark to submit something in writing, as an example, memorandum of understanding, or spelling out the tuition discount, or spelling out the possible utilization of the fields for athletic use.
With regard to the fields,
Yeah, you don't have to come to a conclusion right now.
on the fee question, something to add about fields. As a member of the Community Preservation Committee, I am aware that, or it is my understanding that the selectmen have requested a change in the use of funds that were originally proposed for the ball field for Brad Street property, which would going to take away a prospective playing field there. I think that was scheduled to be a baseball playing field. So the question of fields becomes a little more important to the town. Sam, do you have some other thoughts or any other
Well, I was
thoughts?
just going to say, if we continue the question with the fee, and we act on the basic request for determination, then the applicant does have to understand the fact that it's potentially possible that he'll have to pay the full fee.
We don't have any concerns with that. I think that, again, that's how I run my business. I like to prove what we do, and if we can come up with a good arrangement with the town, then we're all for it.
You noted that you're a private institution, and I prefer to think of you as a non-profit institution, albeit private as well. Now, there are similarities with regard to what your school encompasses as where my daughter works at Cambridge French School. So I'm familiar with it, and that is non-profit, but the absorption gets handled in salaries and expenses and those expanding contractors as you meet your student quotas or you don't meet them. I don't know where that goes, but it's.
We are not a 766 school, so that means we do not do MCAS, which means we do not have public schools flowing very comfortably students into our process. So you are correct, we do have a fluctuating income, but basically I think if we were talking about this fee next year, when we are done incurring the surprise costs of the move, I don't think that we would be as concerned. So if there is a commitment to agree to reevaluate whether or not we provide value, and this board decides that we have not provided value, then it would be it would not be encumbering to pay that fee at that time. We would plan for it.
Other thoughts, comments by other commissioners? Nothing's jumping off the page, excuse the expression.
We'd have to get that all in writing.
Yeah.
As to commitments and,
How soon could you provide a proposed memorandum of understanding with regard to things that you have offered?
The answer to the question.
Without putting any pressure on you to do that.
During the time when we're moving and training teachers and preparing for the new year. Wednesday, I would say by the end of next week we could put together a rough draft.
Well, before our next meeting, which is in 3 weeks.
Fine,
Okay, that's
we
what
could
I was getting a sense
absolutely.
of whether you
Yeah,
needed more
we
time.
could absolutely do that. I would also emphasize, this doesn't sound to me, and I may be presumptuous, that there's any concern about providing clearance on the field itself. It's really just about discussing the best way to do the fees. So I can provide language in regards to the fees, and then we can go back and forth.
All right, well, I get the sense that the commission would appreciate a provision of a memorandum of understanding with regard to fee waivers and what the school feels it can offer in the various areas that have been talked about as commitments, and possibly with the understanding or throwing out as an element of this a waiver for a period of time in which the fee would subsequently be paid. But reminding you that you also can avoid all this by just going ahead and paying the fee.
There would be nothing educational involved.
But we certainly appreciate your consideration, and it's difficult as it is to consider these novel matters. It's useful to go through them and to expand our thinking horizons on the subject. So, with that, I guess I'd look for a motion to continue the matter of considering fee waivers to the time of the next meeting.
So move.
Oh, you're a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? Carries unanimously except for the person accused. So, we can get to the substance of the proposal now. We have taken an extraordinary amount of time up for that, and we have other people on the agenda tonight, so I'd like to move this along if we could.
Yep.
All right,
Mr. Weir.
I'll try to be brief. Charlie, for the record, Charlie Weir, Meridian Associates. Just I think most folks are familiar with the site. This is Route 1. This is Forge Ridge Drive as it pulls in, and this is the building that was formerly the commercial building, which is now the home of the Clark School. Originally, design of this building was going to be larger, and the Coughlins decided to go with a smaller building. There was a point I made with Brent during the site walk, and the reason I'm making the point has to do with that there would have been more impervious surface up in this area, and the drainage design was not changed when we reduced the size of that building. So the drainage has reduced the flows considerably from what was previously designed. Getting to the playing field, where the area is to the north side of the building, and this is the area of the proposed playing field. The buffer zone associated with the wetland is right here. So about a third of the playing field is actually in that buffer zone. This area, when I first walked this 15 years ago, in 1997 actually, 17 years ago, when I first walked at this site, this area, this entire area was cleared. It was an old gravel pit. It had been cleared. And this particular area, I remember, I think there was a loam pile in that area. And there is a road which runs, one of the woods roads actually runs right here, and the other woods road runs right along here. This is the one I think we're talking about, having a real possibility of being utilized by the school. This one is kind of deep into the woods and leads off into a pretty wet area, so I don't think that one it offers itself as much. The intention right now, the area is partially grass right now, probably about 25% of it. The rest of it is pretty dense woods. Over the last 17 years, that whole area has just been let go, and there isn't a lot of, I wouldn't, in fact, I don't think there's any mature trees on it, but it is certainly densely vegetated today. But the intention would be to take that area, clear that area, level it, and put the playing field that we've been talking about. The drainage from the site runs to the south and to the wetlands, and the intention would be to slope the field down towards the wetlands. The site is still subject to the DEP stormwater management regulations, and I've gone through in our NOI, I've gone through the 11 standards. Actually, a lot of them don't apply per se. We're not exempt, but a lot of them do not apply for the simple reason that we're not proposing any impervious surfaces. So, for example, the calculations for the required infiltration requirements or TSS requirements are all tied to how much impervious surface you have. So since the impervious surface, new impervious surfaces is 0, then the requirement for additional infiltration is not required. The requirements for additional introducing BMPs from removal rates are not required. We do have, I think it's standard number 7, we do have an operation and maintenance program, which is basically erosion and sedimentation control for construction. That's spelled out essentially this sediment barrier in the form of a silt sock along the perimeter, and there's also details on how the site would be, how materials would be handled on the site, and how the site would be planted out so there's no erosion of material to get down into the wetlands. And then for more long-term maintenance of the site, there's already operation and maintenance in place for the project at large. So that, in fact, it was the subject of when we talked about the up on the hill recently. We talked about the stormwater permit for the industrial buildings up here. That's the same operation and maintenance program which is in place for the site at large. So that is essentially the project. I think we meet the requirements of the stormwater management policy, and I don't see where us installing this playing field would result in any detrimental effects to the BDW, which is in the vicinity of the field. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to. No pun intended. I'd be glad to field them.
Right, perspectives?
Well, again, the project that's proposed before you is, the only resource area impacted is the 100-foot buffer zone, which is regulated under the state, and under our bylaw is considered a resource area of its own standing under a bylaw. So this is one of the few aspects of development that we've seen on this site where there is proposed clearing right up to the 25-foot no cut, no disturb line, as well as the fact it's also one of the few proposals we've seen where there's a space that invites public usage and therefore certain maintenance requirements that puts people in the direct neighborhood of being adjacent to the no cut, no disturbance areas. So my only thoughts and recommendations to the commission is that, the possible issuance of an order of conditions would be rather simple in terms of focusing on the erosion control, and then the commission's normal practice is to restrict, to request that any lawn care or application of fertilizers or whatever be, if possible, just low nitrogen, organic based. And in the past, the commission has looked to actually prohibit and restrict utilization of pesticides and herbicides, although in this situation, I think it would be more appropriate to characterize that as being not allowed to be utilized in the no cut, no disturbance areas or any of the unaltered buffer zone, because I think it would not be good policy to an athletic field where you're looking for folks to possibly be in close relationship to wetlands that are known for their mosquito populations. I don't believe it would be a good public health policy not to allow, if it was appropriate for treatment of the field itself, if they needed to do that, in terms of the health aspects with West Nile virus.
Absolutely.
And Triple E. So then the only question I was going to ask the commission was, at a bare minimum, we should have posts and signage, but where this is a field, should there possibly be consideration to some utilization of maybe either some type of fencing or whatever, where we're bringing activities right up to the very edge of the no cut, no disturbance zone, and knowing that fields are usually subject to a heavier maintenance regime and more frequent maintenance than are either residential or passive spaces, and therefore does the commission wish to possibly consider either the erection of some type of fencing, post and rail fencing, or something else? And because of the Woods Road intersection here, does that provision want to allow for the possible gapping so that if there is consideration of a trail being utilized and taking over the use of the pre-existing cart paths or woods roads there? Would we want to do that? So other than that, though, it's a pretty straightforward project, and I don't see any perceived detrimental impacts. And I had quite a conversation with Mr. Weir in regards to stormwater, because I wanted to make sure that the proposed contours and gradings did not concentrate the flow into the wetlands. Oh, but before I forget it, and Charlie did mention it, we did have a conversation about the fact that there could possibly be less of a cleared area up next to the existing Woods Road, which is being used for public access. Remember, we talked about the fact that this little hook of the erosion control, that could possibly be brought around, so that we would maintain vegetative screening along the Woods Road, that there really wasn't, in terms of utilization of the field or use of the field, there wasn't really a need to clear that additional aspect where we're right along the Woods Road that's being contemplated for a public access trail or whatever, that, you know, leaving some trees and stuff in place that wasn't necessarily critical to the grading in there.
We're looking for good tire swing trees.
I don't know if they quite that
we,
yeah, I was gonna say, the alders and the cherries there, unless you're just thinking of little red wagon tires.
On the other side.
That's one of our losses in transition. We had 7 tire swings, and
You
we
might,
no
you might
places
get
on
some
the
on this
property.
hill, just on the other side. There's some big ones up there. So,
It's a sad loss.
How do commission members feel about Brent's thoughts with regard to possible post and rail fencing?
Well, some fencing should be put there, because there's gonna be intrusion by people, balls are gonna be flying over there,
Yeah, there's gonna be
guarantee it.
balls, that kids are gonna chase the balls into the woods, we know that's gonna happen, so.
It'll probably be more like chain link. It'll probably be
Well,
better.
that would prevent that,
Yeah, but
probably.
you can't get the balls if the
It goes
deterrent's
over
there. Right.
So, I mean, at least
Yeah.
the post and rail provides a visual deterrent, but you know somebody's gonna have to go in there after something at some
Yeah.
point.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, it's not,
and the fence isn't gonna be all the way around it, so. It's gonna be open. to
No,
some-
it's really only on the end there that you,
Right.
and I highlighted it in pink on here
Yeah.
just to, you know,
Just
just
to
to
prevent it from-
accentuate that
Yeah.
for the commission, that it
So
would
people are
really
gonna-
only be that end.
Yeah, people would be able to walk around the sides to get balls and stuff like that,
Well,
but it's to deter them.
Yeah, and we just usually look for at least posts and signage, but
Understood.
in this situation, I didn't know whether just, you know, some kind of, again, minimal fencing or
The
whatever.
concern that I would have.
It's,
first of all, I don't see where you have to restrict people from going into the buffer zone, the 25 feet. I think what you have to restrict is the mowing of it,
yeah.
Yes.
which
the
we've
maintenance
seen
of
done
it.
in many locations. So I would say post and rail, something of that nature would be fine, especially with adequate markers. And having a little entryway to the pathway, I don't see a problem with that, because that should not,
Well, I mean, I've
As
been.
well as that
with,
would be an entry point for ball retrieval, too.
yeah.
Well, yeah, but recently, I've been in Pingree, and they're
Yeah, we have a.
surrounded by
there's some
wetlands,
parental
and their
problems
soccer
with
fields are bordered by,
sale
especially at the wetlands,
visualization.
chain link fence to prevent anything from going inside there.
So
They are marked,
Yeah, are you all right with posting that?
the wetlands, but, you know, people are still going in there. You know, and granted, they're right up against the wetlands, so there's the buffer zones, these fields are in the buffer zones.
Yeah.
You know, and I understand what Sam is saying, but, you know, anything that could prevent them posting rail fences aren't gonna do that. You know, I don't mean to boost the price, but, you know, there is a wetland there. You know,
Well, it's at least 25 feet away.
yeah. Balls fly pretty far, even with little
Oh, yeah.
kids.
Well, that's true, but occasional ball in the wetland isn't going to be a major disruption, I would think, but.
No, but Sam brings up a good point about the mowing. I mean, the fence will just clearly define the limits of
Yeah.
the mowing.
That is one of the options, that is one of the things that has to be defined anyway. You know, whether that fence is post and rail or chain link.
Well, I have a.
Well, we don't have to specify
Yeah,
that.
exactly,
We could just say
exactly.
that we wish, have the applicant propose to us later on specifics on some type of protective barrier
Yep.
that should take the form of some type of fencing
Effective, yeah.
at that area, and then work out the details of what
What
the
they are.
specificity is of the fencing material, and then the signage, and leave it at that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Post and post and hem.
So like a post and perhaps like a rope divider might be visually attractive to the
Oh, yeah.
students. It also would prevent students from sitting on it from a safety point of view, but also provide the opportunity for kids to throw sweatshirts or whatever over the side and all the other, you know, accoutrement that fences provide without, you know, chain link
Yeah.
might be detrimental to the attractiveness of the wetlands as well.
You'd be surprised. You know, there are different types, and again, what Brent said, it is not for us to tell you what to use. It is for us to make sure that,
Yeah, just say the requirement that there would be some kind
There are
of
requirements
barrier there that
associated.
would have signage incorporated within it,
Sounds great.
and allow you to submit to the office later on, so we can
Okay.
figure out that.
I assume you could probably get your posts from the woods, the trees you will be cutting.
Well, I'm not sure that they're really very durable, it's mostly big alders
Alders
and
I was-
buckthorn.
If they're cedars, that's
Pioneers.
what I had in mind.
Yeah.
Well, that certainly would be an attractive option to share a signage on that saying that we recycled. I know that we have a number of parents that would be thrilled with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you're gonna be able to.
I don't think you're gonna be able to do a good job.
Not my
Although
field.
there was the
No.
dead cedar there.
Yeah,
Get
but
one
that thing
from
was
that.
really, that was really scraggly.
That was pretty scraggly.
It was-
So you're the proposed motion, Brent, that you suggest in terms of fine tuning this?
just,
I'm not sure that, well, can this be totally separated? Can permit issuance be totally separated from the consummation of the question on the fee?
Probably not,
right.
so we'd have to.
So therefore, I would just suggest that we continue this. I mean, there certainly is the opportunity for some slight revisions to the plans in regards to what we talked about, as well as the submittal of the possible information about a memorandum of understanding and stuff. So maybe it would be better, I would be better advised to request the commission discuss with the applicant permission for continuance to September 9th.
Agree to that?
I think that makes sense.
All right. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll say.
All in favor?
Right.
Opposed? None? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Occasionally.
September what night? Still
Yep.
on?
He's been. Let's see if I can get him.
Yes, Doug moved his office down,
Yeah.
on Topsail.
It's on the right, that's out, across from that car place.
You know, Doug, you understand that Mr. Coughlin is not the applicant
Oh, I
in this
understand.
situation, that it's Mr. Clark, so just another one of his tenants, so you technically have no financial encumbrances or connections with the applicant of that particular permit.
Yeah, well aware.
Okay.
I just think that caution is the better approach.
Well, it's
Well, yeah.
at the same time as an abutter, Mr. Coughlin had potential concerns with regard to use of trails and things like that across the property and roads, so I think
Right,
prudence is,
Right.
yeah, he does.
comfortable with Doug's
He's on the agenda.
shoes, but I don't know that he necessarily has to do it every time. Sorry for the delay, John.
No
problem.
Okay.
Turn the chair back over.
All right, so this is the 8:45 item. This is a continued item, so it's the continued notice of intent for land off Daniels Road, map 9, parcel 23, Tompkins Desjardins Trust, Bruce Tompkins trustee, for the proposed construction of 6 duplex dwellings with associated roadway, driveways, utilities, stormwater facilities, and grading, possibly within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. And Mr. DeCoulis is here. So let's see. What we have that's new is, so there's been a Horsley Witten review on dated July 15th, 2014, and then from you, Mr. DeCoulis, looks like we have a response to that, specifically a response, and then a number of hydrology tables and summaries responsive to their concerns. Does that sound like about where we are right now? Anything else than that come in?
Well, that has triggered, that's thrown the process back over again in regards to the submittal by Mr. DeCoulis on August 13th, which the town office, I myself have not reviewed because it came in way too close to the meeting time, but that has triggered in order, and Mr. DeCoulis made a request that the materials be sent to Horsley Witten for their review, which has triggered Horsley Witten contacting the commission and proposing that they will do a review, but it's beyond the original scope and beyond the last amendment to their original technical review. And so they've requested a $1,000 fee to complete what would be the third stormwater management design peer review. The information was transmitted to Mr. DeCoulis, who responded just a couple days ago that he'd attend the meeting tonight and present the town with a check for $1,000, which is what Horsley Witten was looking for. And I was going to ask the commission if therefore I would be able to sign on the dotted line and engage the services of Horsley and Witten to perform said review.
Yep. Does that basically sum it up? Yep.
Right,
Okay.
that covers just about everything.
Yep, okay. So, yeah, the letters are getting shorter. That's, I guess that's how you measure progress in these situations.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, but they're, in addition to getting shorter, they're certainly getting more technical.
Right, right.
So I don't think, even the more technically minded of our commission members are really gonna be able to review this themselves, but maybe. Looking at you, Bob.
I know. Maybe.
Yeah, but maybe, right, and that's not gonna be sufficient. So, yes, I think we can authorize you, Brent, to sign on the dotted line.
You know, we've now received the check, so.
Okay.
And I'll make sure that information gets to Horsley Witten ASAP so they can.
I didn't get the last one.
I'll make sure that Horsley and Witten is informed ASAP because I'm starting vacation time tomorrow, but I'll notify them prior to them starting the vacation so that they know.
Right, and they already have this material, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
well, it
that's
was both, I asked for electronic files, I did receive those.
Yep.
I touched base with Horsley Witten today and confirmed with them because when they responded to my asking them if they wanted the hard copies mailed to them, they unfortunately replied and said they wanted them emailed. So of course I had sent them the electronic files, but they misspoke and they actually wanted me to mail the packet to them. It was mailed this morning, so.
Right. Well, that should be enough time.
Well, yeah, the person will have that by Thursday.
Right.
They'll have received that in the mail, so that will probably be about the same time that they hear from me. in regards to
Yeah. Okay,
Able to consummate the review, so.
so is there anything else we can do today?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We have to wait for their review.
But the amount of information seems somewhat limited. The fee is, you know, somewhat limited. The scope of the further review is hopefully not too expensive. So is it reasonable to think we'll have a response by September 9th, or what do you think?
You know, I'm gonna have to ask them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the only way they could answer that question is me also giving them permission to start their review
Sure.
and telling them that, you know, the funds have been secured, so I will, in telling them that we've gotten the funds and transmitting them, you know, a scan of the signed agreement, I'll request that they respond with an anticipated
Okay.
date. So I think tentatively, we should continue this to the 9th, but with the understanding that we might request a continuance so that we
Right.
just don't use up meeting time if we haven't gotten
Right.
something from Horsley and Witten to actually talk about
Right.
and discuss.
Okay, that, yeah, go ahead.
My
I'm sorry.
impression is they've been, you know, reasonably speedy in terms of the responses here, so I would
Yeah,
expect.
they have.
Yeah, they've usually been able to get back to us within a week and a half. to
Oh,
two
no,
weeks,
yeah.
so-
I think from their perspective, they know this project now.
Right.
So they don't have to relearn it, and it's, you know, they're seeing things, mostly things they're familiar with, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so with your consent, we'll continue this to September 9th. If that isn't enough time, we'll let you know, you let us know, and we'll just do it on
Fine.
the 30th instead. Okay,
Need a motion?
I think I need a motion to continue this hearing to September 9th, 2014.
So moved.
Judy moves, and a second,
Second.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all against. Thank you, Mr. DeCoulis, and we'll see you on the 9th. I hope.
Okay, thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks, John. In anticipation of the next agenda item, do you wish to recuse yourself as
Well,
the
you know,
chair?
I was just thinking about that. Was there a memo on this?
No,
I didn't think so. I was just looking.
no, the next agenda item, I believe, is one
You wrote the
I
memo.
was able to
Yeah.
do some memos, but.
So I think my thought is, on the more routine administrative matters, I don't need to do that. And if this turns, you know, into something different than that, then I may reconsider that.
What's the asterisk here for? Is that the new item that's on here, or is that why that's there?
Yes, remember you asked me to specifically note, when I revised an agenda, you asked me to put an asterisk or some other depiction as to which
Right.
items had been revised?
Oh, there it is, way down, okay, gotcha. I remember that from a prior meeting, sorry to
Not that I'm trying to rub that back in your face or whatever, but
Oh, no.
you're the one who said it would help if I
Absolutely.
clarified when I was changing things.
All I have to do is remember where it is.
All right, so this is the 850 item, continued request for certificate of compliance 63-601 at 406 Haverhill Street, map 14, parcel 14, Gateway 2 Realty Trust of 1997.
So at a previous meeting where this first came onto our agenda, whose meeting date escapes me, the certificate of compliance request had revealed that there was actually substantial non-compliance with the issued order of conditions. So on July 10th, I had issued a notice of non-compliance and listed or enumerated on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, basically 8 conditions that there were issues with. 3 of those conditions had to do with the fact that there hadn't been post-project water quality monitoring. That has now been completed. It had not been done, it has been completed. And basically, it showed that all the samples, let's see. All samples from monitoring wells 1, 2, and 3 reported as non-detectable below laboratory detection limit and significantly below drinking water standards. Groundwater well 1201 from the town of Raleigh test well, which I believe is on the other side of the road, reported non-detect for all constituents with the exception of trace chloroform and bromochloromethane. Preliminary review assumes below standards. So in terms of 406 Haverhill Street, groundwater monitoring shows that there has been no decrease or negative impact to the quality of the groundwater on the site.
No increase in levels and no
There's
decrease in quality. Right.
Yeah, so there's been no contaminants, and it meets drinking water standards. What's on the property.
And that was the only remaining issue?
Well, no, that was the issue in returns to the monitoring, is
Yeah,
that,
that's right.
that we, pre-construction and demolition monitoring had been done, but no post-construction, so the post-construction has been done, okay. So, there were steel storage containers that were in the parking lot within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands, for which no permission had been sought from the commission for their placement there. They have been removed and repositioned outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. They are still in the parking lot, but they are now over away. If you want me to spread the plan out, I can actually show you. Okay, all right. So that issue's been taken care of. The dumpster pad has been put in place. So the dumpster pad has been put in place. They did forget to scribe it with the channel around the perimeter. I checked with Mr. Weir, he did provide them with that detail, but they forgot to do it. So it's up to the commission as to whether you wish them to have to
Cut
take
it.
a concrete saw and
Yeah.
cut
Concrete
and
saw.
inscribe the channel. Well, the idea was to keep any quote-unquote garbage juice from running right off and running onto the parking lot and then running right off the parking lot.
Yeah, towards the well.
Right, and of course, being on a perfectly flat, level slab of concrete,
With a drain that goes across.
well,
You know?
it just, it wasn't what was intended.
Yep.
Depends on whether it's a 10-year garbage drain.
Well, all right, so,
That's like the 100-year storm.
so instead of two step forward, we just went one step forward on that one. And the dumpster is on the dumpster pad now too. Okay.
Well, it would be pretty easy to.
In the same photographic evidence, there was an issue where there was an accumulation of sediments on the parking lot. The crushed stone check dams were not maintained and were all clogged with sediments. And the riprap area that then has the catch basin in the lowest part of it was so overgrown and the grass was matted on top of the catch basin that you could only see two of the rectangular openings through the grate. You can now see that it's all been maintained and it's all been, it's been appropriately maintained and there is a maintenance requirement, because of course there is an ongoing maintenance, O&M maintenance plan for the property anyway. We were just discussing, Mr. Coughlin, that the dumpster pad did get put in place, but it's not up to specifications.
Okay, but
They forgot to put the drainage channel around the interior perimeter of it.
okay, okay, we're talking about 406, I'm sorry.
406, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
406, yeah. So
So you
that
know how
is
there's supposed to be basically a cut channel around
Yeah.
the four sides. I
Alright, so
think-
I can have them saw cut that in?
Yeah,
Yeah, you just cut it with
concrete saw.
just unfortunate that they didn't do it when the wet
They was-
cement.
They was
It does say Kilroy was here though in the back right corner, did you notice that? No, I'm sorry, I'm joking.
No, I didn't see that. All right, so we gotta put a, I'll have them go up there and saw cut a groove in it.
Yeah, just cut.
Okay, I'm sorry, we were out there talking, I didn't realize you were talking.
That's all right,
about
if we needed you, I would have
it. Okay,
beckoned you in.
okay.
Yeah. So that
Yeah,
that
you
was
sent me, and
actually,
I sent it over to the concrete guy and told him to put it in, so, okay.
So yeah, it needs to, because the idea was to keep the juice on the pad if anything was running off.
We can have them saw cut that.
But, yeah, the drainage, catch basin, drainage swale, that's been taken care of. Okay. So the material that had the gravel and crushed stone or pea stone or whatever it was, did get pulled back onto the pavement, but it still is not contained in any type of, it doesn't have a barrier.
Yep.
And when Charlie and I stopped there the other day, they had a bobcat
Scooping in there?
pushing into it, but,
No.
it would just end up working its way right off the pavement again.
Okay.
But yeah, the debris and stuff that had been off the pavement, that had been all picked up. But we do have a problem with where the gravel had been dumped. There's now an area approximately 20 by 20 that's all disturbed soils. It's apparently where they removed the gravel and dirt that had gone off the pavement. And there's also disposed of dead landscaping bushes, yews and rhododendrons that had been discarded off of the parking lot. So we've made some progress and really only have two remaining issues. That area needs to be hand rake level. The disturbed exposed soil needs to be reseeded and mulched. The discarded landscaping debris, the dead yews, rhododendrons, those need to be picked up and taken to appropriate disposal. And the bulk storage of loose gravels or stones or whatever needs to have some type
Yeah,
of
what-
stock.
What I recommended to him, just to interrupt, We have a tenant up there who I've been working diligently with that's causing our problems up here, and he's improved greatly. What I recommended for him is to pick up some Jersey barriers and make a U around where he wants to keep his stone. And all he needs is like 8 of them, which he told me he was gonna order, and I'll get on him about that. And we'll get that around there. I did mention to him, he had piled the gravel in the area, which he did take out, and he said he was gonna get some seed and mulch and redo that, number 2. Number 3, I didn't realize when we poured the dumpster pad, I didn't realize our guys didn't de-groove it. I'll have them saw that straight away. And I've mentioned to the tenant that he has to maintain that drain swale in his lawn cutting program, which he's done now,
Yeah,
and keep that catch basin clean.
yeah, but you probably didn't know about the discarded dead yews and rhododendrons.
No, I did that.
They're right on the back edge of that disturbed area.
Okay, I will make sure that those get picked up.
You can plant them out front?
Pardon me?
You can plant them
No,
out front?
they're not capable of, at this time, they're not capable of being
They're
planted.
dead.
They've had it.
So I will get on him on those remaining items and get them.
So where
pulled up.
there's a very discrete list of really, I think it's 4 items I think we've enumerated here.
Yep.
Would the commission consider voting to issue a complete certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions contingent upon field verification by the office of the remaining 4 items being appropriately resolved on site?
Yes.
It sounds like John can get these things done,
If he doesn't do them, I'll send our own people out to do them,
Right.
okay?
but he's already told you he will, so. that
He
seems
was, and
pretty
he was,
likely.
he was looking to buy some Jersey barriers. He was gonna put some wood up there, and I said, the wood isn't, because they pile of stone and they have to go out with a little bit of scoop of stone every day. I said, you put wood barriers up there, they're gonna be smacked, and we're gonna have the same problem
Knock 'em
down the road. So I said, buy some concrete Jersey barriers and put them in there and be done with
They
it.
can bend,
Okay, yeah, sounds simple.
Oh,
Yeah.
and just for the commission's edification, it really, well, only in the case that we should know what's going on with the property, though we still have, the order of conditions applying to it. I noticed on the planning board agenda that it was applied for and I believe received approval not required.
Yeah, the Form A,
Form
I gotta
A.
get that too.
Yeah, that the lot has been subdivided now, so there's now 2 lots. And they were going to just provide a copy of the plan to the office, because I believe as soon as you go record it, it's gonna be official, right?
On the, yeah, it'll be at the registry of deeds.
Yeah.
The intent, so everybody knows what's going on, we have about an 18-acre site up there that goes back up, ties up, comes around. What we did, we spun off the white building, pretty much the paved area, and right out in back of Agawam, which Charlie did for a Form A. Our clear intent is to sell it to Olympic, because he wants to continue on up there, okay? So,
Okay.
it's not sold yet, but there's strong negotiations going on. That's the reason why Charlie did the Form A on it. So I would think within the next month or so that it will be sold to him, okay? And what I'm trying to do is get this cleaned up before we sell it to him, so I meet all our commitments with this board.
Yep, okay.
Before my family sells it to him.
Yep, well, it makes sense then. I mean, I would support approving it conditional upon field verification that these things have been done, but I'm sure you'll get them done and you have every motivation to get them done, so.
No, we'll get it, he'll either get them done or we'll get them done.
Right.
And I think the other thing, you did get all the reports, which was huge from
Yeah,
the water.
yeah, we were talking
Right,
about that.
you guys were out of the
Yeah,
room when you,
okay,
yeah,
all right,
those
so
are all
that's
done.
I will so move.
All right, so the motion would be to issue a complete certificate of compliance, subject to field verification of I think there were 4 remaining
Four
items.
remaining items.
And there's a motion to do that from Mr. Turner, and is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and all
And
against?
there are ongoing conditions.
Well, yeah, with the
Yeah.
ongoing conditions. This-
But those would pass over to him on the sale, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Perpetual.
Yeah, whoever owns the property owns
I
the
will make
responsibility.
him aware of what, I already have, but I will reiterate that with him.
Right, right.
What did you say that solvent was? Bromochloromethane?
Oh, gosh. Hold on.
think that's what I heard.
Sounds good to me.
Bromodichloromethane. But that appears to be on the other side of the street.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
showed up in one of the monitoring wells, but apparently in non-critical.
Yeah, I don't know what the
Level.
MCLs are on that, but.
Yeah, but that didn't even happen on ours, it was on the one.
Right, that's what I'm telling
We
you.
tested over
Across
in
the
the
street
towns,
on the
yeah.
ball
Yeah.
field.
Yeah, which means it's coming from
Somewhere.
somewhere's over there. Okay.
Right, not in yours. So. All right, so that, I think we voted, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Moved and seconded, but I believe we voted.
Yep.
So you guys are all set?
Thank you, gentlemen,
Thank you.
ladies.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Well, actually, before Mr. Coughlin goes, we had a conversation, and on the agenda down here is that
Yes,
there
yeah, they're
are
involved.
there are remaining outstanding issues with the 2 enforcement orders that were issued for Forest Ridge. One for the landscaping dump, which needs certification that the material's all been removed from the buffer zone and that stabilized slopes have been achieved. And the commission, because of the issue with moving of things or whatever, required a plan. So we're looking for like an as-built plan that we've got stable slopes on the material that's left there, certified by a professional, as well as we had asked for monitoring because we anticipated that there was supposed to be some establishment of vegetative cover to help stabilize that material once it had been pulled back. Now, I had met Mr. Coughlin on site roughly in October of last year, where I had expressed concern that the initial work had appeared to left a section of the arc of the most northwesterly curve of the mound still seemed to be extremely precipice in nature and not stabilized. So, which is one of the reasons why we asked for follow-up monitoring and then professional review and then submittal of plans. So Mr. Weir had proposed an existing conditions plan which had an action sequence on there,
Yep.
which called for pulling back, removal of material out of the buffer zone, and then the establishment of slopes. And so the directive was solely calling for all that to be documented, and we had hoped that we would be seeing that and it would be closed out by now, but I reminded Mr. Coughlin of that, and so that's something that needs to be done, and I believe you were gonna have that worked on
Yeah.
relatively
Yeah.
immediately.
Charlie, I got a copy of your email, you
Right.
copied Charlie on it.
Yeah.
I gave him a copy of it tonight, that's on Charlie's high
Right.
priority list.
Right,
I
and then I
called-
hadn't gotten you an email yet, but you and I verbally discussed the fact that we know that down on the frontage of 14 to 40 Forest Ridge, where there was that clearing pretty close to the Raleigh-Ipswich line that occurred on Mr. Coughlin's property, where they
The clearing on the front.
yeah, clearing of the BVW, clearing of the conservation restricted area.
Yeah, right, right.
Where he engaged the services of Mr. DeRosa,
Correct.
who did a replanting and restoration plan in that area. There was supposed to be follow-up monitoring and reporting. We haven't seen any of that, and I think that was all that's left, but I've gotta be honest with you, I gotta go back into the file and see where that stands. But again, Mr. Coughlin and I had a verbal discussion, and he was going to contact Mr. DeRosa to see about him providing us with the follow-up monitoring report, because whenever there's any planting, standard operating procedure with the commission, especially with an overwintering period, is that we want to see some type of follow-up monitoring. We want to know that the planting stock survived and where this was an impact of bordering vegetated wetlands. We also have the regulatory obligation that whenever we try to restore bordering vegetated wetlands, we need to see that 75% of the native wetlands plant community has been reestablished, at least within 2 growing seasons. Now, we've only had 1 growing season so far, but if nobody goes in and looks at it, we don't know whether we're there yet or not.
I put, after we had our conversation, Michael is doing 2 or 3 other jobs for us, and I asked him to put it high on his priority list, to go by and take a look and give you a full report of what he came up with. So I would hope by the end of this week, you should see it.
Yeah.
And then you can react to it if he's gotta do some more, or he doesn't,
Right.
or if you're satisfied with it, we move forward.
And again, this is all working towards the, you know, the step that I've recommended, that is when people do resolve enforcement matters with the commission, that we issue them a return to compliance letter so that we know that things have been appropriately taken.
We're still gonna
care
have to
of.
go through another year on that anyways.
Well, maybe, but let's see.
All right, that's
Let's see
fine.
what he says and see where it goes.
Okay, that's fine,
Yeah.
all right. I would hope by the end of this week you have a report on your desk. Charlie tells me,
Well, again, you don't have to, I'm going on vacation tomorrow, so don't
I'll
feel you're under an obligation to
No,
get
I'll
something.
forget about it,
done.
that, I just soon have it done. And Charlie's gonna make,
It's on your
getting that
desk.
slope
He doesn't
deal
have to worry.
his highest priority too. He just told me that.
Okay.
Right, Charlie?
Yep.
All right, you're on record saying that. Come on, let's go home and go to bed.
Uh,
Good night.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, bye-bye. You wanna hear with anything here, or you got it?
I'm sorry?
They're broke, they're cold, and everything.
Oh, really?
Hey,
Pesticide.
you do it, have you-
What?
I thought I, pesticide.
How the heck did that get on the ball field?
There's a trench, there's a passageway from the drain in the corner of that property, the
Yeah.
white building property that goes under the street.
Yeah,
But,
Eventually
but
goes
the,
into that
but the,
brook.
but the monitoring wells on
Well-
the property side, they're not showing it, so.
that does, all that says is it's not in the groundwater on that site.
Well, right,
Yeah,
but
that's
that's
all
the
it
end of his
says.
responsibility
Well, yes.
for it. It's getting there, but
Yes.
not from him,
Right.
basically what that said. But who else is using pesticide on the area, would be the question.
And I'm sorry.
Not a question.
Pen
Yeah,
briefly
it's a
stopped
yeah.
working for whoever seconded the complete certificate of compliance thing for Mr. Coughlin.
No,
Nobody seconded that?
no,
Somebody.
I might have,
I think you did.
yeah.
Dave did, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, I just didn't want him to walk out. I want, you know,
No, it's good.
I want us to get
No, that's great.
those
I knew,
enforcement
I kinda
things
knew those were down there, but,
battened up.
right. All right, so that's the last thing on the agenda, so we
Yeah,
just skipped ahead.
He was about to walk out of the room, so.
Yep, no, that's fine, we can always do those out of order.
Well, there's nothing to be voted on, it's just, you know,
Right.
just letting everybody know
Reminder.
and getting him, more importantly, on record to
So,
get it finished, so to speak.
So that brings us back to the 9 o'clock item. A new request for certificate of compliance for 63,550, 156 Leslie Road, map 7, parcel 20, subdivision lot 2B, Kenneth S. Murphy, owned by Christine Henniges Ward. And this, we have a memo on.
Yeah, she got memos on these. I've done most of the inspections on these last week. So anyway, things are great. I only need to go field verify. The erosion control was supposedly being removed yesterday and today. So I just need to field verify that the erosion controls have been removed. And so I recommend the commission consider issuing a complete certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions that are stated on the memo and with the field verification of that removal.
Any comments by commissioners?
I will move that.
Is there a motion to move that? Motion to do that? There is. Is there a second?
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And no against? And the motion carries. There's a memo on the next one too, right?
Yes.
This one has no problems.
Yes, so 24 LaBelle Road, septic system replacement that for whatever reason never, during the period of time before we worked an agreement out with the Board of Health to make sure that everyone, if they had an order of conditions, got it closed at the same time they closed with the Board of Health. This one didn't get done, so I researched, and the material from the Board of Health file all confirms that it was put in as proposed, and they issued a certificate of compliance, so we only have one quote-unquote ongoing condition, our standard one about the fertilizer and pesticides and herbicides. Property is separated from most of the resource areas that we're normally pretty sensitive about, and doesn't even have a no-cut, no-disturbance area on it because it's where LaBelle Road is. The drive, where we would normally have a no-cut, no-disturb. So really, the work was within the 200-foot riverfront area, but where they placed the septic system was on previously developed lawn portion of the lot. So that fell under our jurisdiction, but there wasn't any new alteration of resource area at all. So I recommend consideration issuance of a complete certificate of compliance with the ongoing condition.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No against, and the motion carries.
Now, there's a little grouping of LaBelle Road things that came up here, all kind of stimulated or initiated by the inquiry and real estate sale when they came into my office and started asking and weren't really sure about what lot they had this outstanding order on. And so, at the same time, I went out and did the site visit to 24 LaBelle Road to let the commission know. I had also I found 2 outstanding orders at 22, I think it is, LaBelle Road, order for a garage and then an order for a replacement septic system. At the same time, I went and did the field visit to 24 LaBelle Road. I noticed there were 2 cars in the driveway of 20 or 22, whatever it was. So I stopped there, because I hadn't gotten any return phone call, and every time I tried to call and leave a message, their voicemail was all full and wouldn't accept any messages. So I met Mr. Wunson, who has one of the biggest pit bull or bull mastiff dogs that I have ever seen, thankfully separated by a very nice closed storm door. He indicated, you know, that
You get a lot of unexpected visitors, I guess.
well, yeah, he also indicated that the notice of violation letter wasn't at the top of his list of things to jump on right away, and I talked to him about, you know, that at least one of them, the replacement septic system, I knew we could probably resolve right away by just looking at the Board of Health file. So he was going to be stopping in at the office. He had said sometime this week. I haven't seen him yet. But I took the initiative and looked at the Board of Health file. And it turns out that on the replacement septic system, I don't know what happened with the garage permit, but on the replacement septic system, apparently the firm handling the job came in during the period of time that you had no conservation agent. And surprise, surprise, in the Board of Health's file was our Wetlands Protection Act request for a certificate of compliance, which the board the Board of Health processed as if it was their
And they signed
Board of Health.
And they signed off on it?
Well, they couldn't issue, you have to issue another document to actually issue the certificate.
Yeah.
But they had stamped it in and
Oh, I see
received
what you
it
mean.
and
Okay.
acted
It was
like,
just the application.
like they were the conservation office
Yep.
on it. So it partially answered the question as to
Where
why
it went.
the commission didn't hear that the project was done. So anyway, but the short version is that there is a fairly easy path of resolution to that, but I do need Mr. Wunson to come into the office and
Hopefully without the bull mastiff in tow.
Yeah.
In tow.
So there are a couple other things on the
Yep.
agenda. This is just, the next one on the list is just a discussion of the requested release of the Daniels Road property that we were just talking about with Mr. DeCoulis from Chapter 61. We have a letter here that you've given us, Brent, from Attorney Greeno, making that request to release that property from
Right.
Chapter 61. So
We're
that is addressed
Yeah.
to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, but we're copied by requirement, there is a
Yes.
requirement to copy the
Right.
commission in
Right.
in the regulations for chapter 61.
Right.
And I guess the only thing I want to mention is that, number one, first off, that particular part of the larger parcel was never identified by any of the past open space and rec committees as a parcel to seek for acquisition.
Right.
It was never identified as having any particular sensitive natural resources either on it or associated with it. It also, because there's a roadway easement down through the center of it, it actually kind of, what would be the kind word? It devalues it for consideration for natural resource protection because they've specifically configured that it have a roadway access easement with the pull-out for the cul-de-sac through it. So even if you purchase the property for preservation, it would still have that easement for potentially running an access road down through it to get to the remaining portion of the map 9 parcel 23 that is still owned by the Tompkins Desjardins Trust.
That's on the other side of
The
stream.
intermittent stream and the emergent wetlands that's there.
Now that, the outfit that this proposed sale is to,
Yeah, that's the
is that the,
40B contractor.
is that the
Yeah.
same outfit that you were telling me the other day that owns that piece that comes out on Weathersfield
No,
Street?
no.
Because that could be one long continuation with exits on both ends.
Yeah, that's actually a different, well, anyway, but no, it's not the same entity, as far as I know.
Building and
He's not
Remodeling
now.
Corporation of
Yeah.
America.
Well, the interesting thing of this, of talking to the zoning board of appeals, of course, this is something that should have been done 2 or 3 years ago, at the time they submitted their 40B application process to the zoning board of appeals.
Right.
But
Stale.
which that isn't really our concern or germane to our discussion. Our focus should be, well, is there any overriding value? Would it make sense to try to pursue acquisition of this property for protection? And I'm just trying to relate that there doesn't seem to be any characteristics of this property, nor does this configuration with the easement lend itself to this being a potential acquisition for protection of natural resources, at least in terms of how the Conservation Commission normally looks at these things. We have no conserved land, we have no conservation restrictions that abut this property, so it wouldn't, provide contiguous habitat to previously protected areas. So if the commission, because the selectmen will ask our opinion in regards to this, so would the commission wish me to convey the fact that the Conservation Commission does not seek to have this property preserved for protection of natural resources, and therefore does not have any interest in trying to pursue acquisition. I think that's what I need to say to them, or something to that
Something
effect.
along those lines, but I would put some language in there that indicate that this is a matter that should have come up when the whole issue was proposed to have been built in the first
I
No
would,
sale involved. no.
yeah, I was gonna say, but, because I think that's mostly zoning board of appeals stuff, so I'm not sure that it's really a criteria that we should be writing down, because it isn't, those aren't our rules and regulations.
Maybe you can just say that the commission's aware of no extraordinary environmental or conservation-related values to the land and does not support, or does not advocate. And if they wanted to spend $700,000 that the town doesn't have, we're not gonna oppose
Right,
it,
yeah,
but
it's all locked up
it's
going
not
on
our business.
Girl Scout property.
Right, a much more valuable property from our point of view, but we don't have to say any of that, we do not advocate the acquisition of this property.
Chapter 1, tax deferred land?
Chapter one.
61.
61.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
It's
it's
tax
being
deferred.
managed for forestry, so it's
For ag,
considered
right.
agricultural.
Right, and it's tax deferred, so when it comes out of 61, they have to pay the deferred taxes.
Yeah.
But it's the only
But-
thing the town could do.
But the
about
town has the
this
right
is-
of first
Yeah,
refusal if they want
is
it.
pay
And where they
$700,000
have-
for it.
And where they have a valid purchase and sale agreement,
Right.
the only thing under discussion was whether you could offer the same
Yep.
price, because supposedly they proved the validity of
Right.
what's being offered by giving us a attested to purchase and sale agreement.
Well, which we already know this is going on because
Right.
they poured a lot of time and resources into getting it approved.
That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Still ongoing.
All right, so if you want to run the language by me, Brent, I'm sure you can write it without my help, but if you get stuck on it, just email
Yeah.
it to me and I'll tell you what I think.
And no interest in exercising
Yeah.
option acquisition or, okay.
So, status reports, Cuddy.
Right, so you should have received copies of two memos, the Board of Health's memo in regards to their site visit, and copy from the building inspectors. It should have been in the,
Don't see Board of Health, but I saw Board of Health electronically a little while ago, I'm pretty sure.
okay, I
But,
thought
Ken Ward's is in here. I think Ken Ward managed to say exactly the opposite of what he meant to say in one paragraph here, but I would read the beginning of the third paragraph. I can find no proof of any landscaping business being conducted at 320 Central Street to be inconsistent with a
Well-
finding that there is a landscaping operation going on at 320 Central Street. But
Pretzel logic.
yeah, I think what he means is, of any business being conducted at 320 Central Street prior to the zoning change.
yes,
That's what he means,
yeah, I think that's exactly what.
so that it would be grandfathered. The kennel business and the dog watch business are grandfathered under the zoning bylaw, but the landscaping is not. That's the way that you would read it too. That's his conclusion.
Well, it's a shame this complaint was ever issued because it turns out to be of no significance. After all the work that you put into it, you have put a lot of work into it.
Well,
Actually, the complaint does have significance.
well, it doesn't, not from a conservation point of view.
Well, not from a conservation point of view,
Right.
but it actually does raise a question, though, in regards that I do believe if we had ever been approached and asked, if someone came to you and said, there's this piece of property, it's been in residential use before, I wanna start stockpiling, handling soils and stone, and it's within the 100-foot buffer zone, we might possibly have said something about requesting like an RDA application, just like we had the conversation with Mr. Coughlin and been having this go around about proper materials handling and storage at 406 Haverhill Street. You know, one of the reasons why there was the complaint coming from Mr. Ryan is the fact that there's been some fairly loose housekeeping, maintenance, and material handling to the point where, you know, the Board of Health did have a few things to say and was concerned about the scattered debris and the fact that their dumpster was overflowing and hadn't been picked up and stuff, but and actually made the suggestion to them because they felt one of the reasons they might have had the complaint about the dust and the dirt was the tracking of materials off of the property out onto Central Street. And they actually made the suggestion in the Board of Health memo that they should put in like a crushed stone entrance exit pad, which is a typical condition that we impose for development of a site.
But now,
On a temporary basis,
but now
yes.
Ken Ward's saying you really need to shut it down anyway.
Well, yes,
So,
yeah,
in any event, I don't think it implicates us any further.
no. So I did want to ask what I should communicate to Mr. Ryan, since Mr. Ryan did write to us initially about this.
Well, I'm fairly sure that the last time we looked at this, you did write to him and said, no, you didn't?
Drafted a letter?
I prepared a status report because the Board of Selectmen wanted to know where this stood. But I did not send that to Mr. Ryan, and I have not communicated to Mr. Ryan. I wanted to wait until both the Board of Health and the building inspector entered onto the property, because they had reasons to enter.
No, I understand, I just
yeah.
thought you had written to him.
No, I hadn't.
Essentially saying that this is not a conservation matter, but your letter.
Well, I was going to say
referred
something that
to
we
the
had,
departments.
I was basically going to say something, or suggest saying something to the effect that we had, that we received his communication and his concerns, and we investigated the matter to the best of our ability and did not find any, did not substantiate any violations to the Wetlands Protection Act or the Town of Raleigh's Wetlands Protection Bylaw, something to that effect.
Well, that's fine, I just could have sworn that's what we decided to do last time. But
Well,
maybe
yeah,
we
but
just
I had
deferred it.
said that I wanted to wait
Yeah.
until both the building inspector and the, and the Board of Health department had entered onto the property, because I asked them if they saw firsthand anything that they thought was causing a detrimental impact to wetland resource areas on the abutting property, to let me know. Because that seemed to be the only possible
Right.
thing that could be happening.
Ken Ward has issued a cease and desist with regard to
For the landscaping, yeah.
landscaping.
It is. Yeah, so,
And he's got 30 days to possibly appeal that to the zoning board.
so you can, you can send that letter to him, I guess, you know. It wasn't- he doesn't-
Well, just kind of acknowledging that we did look into it.
Right.
And now,
Truth is, he really should have written a letter to the other departments, given the complaints he had, but since he
Right.
wrote it to us, we looked at it.
Right.
All right. And then Sabatini, which is next, is, we had a request to continue it, did we not?
well, yeah. Well, and there was.
Mr. Sabatini's daughter was in an accident or something?
Yes,
something
yeah, I
like that.
sent that email around, but
Right.
I did have the site visit with Mr. Sabatini and with Michael DeRosa, his
Right, right.
consultant, and had submitted a restoration plan, and we talked about that and identified a few things in it that needed to be tweaked a little bit, and out on the site, Mr. Sabatini expressed some concerns about long-term management and maintenance. If he did restore the area, we wanted to know that it wouldn't just be left to get overwhelmed by bittersweet, 4 years from now, or whatever, which, is a legitimate concern, but, that's something that, that he should more than likely discuss with the commission. We don't normally use that as a characterization for restoration of impacted wetlands plant communities. We just usually seek their restoration within 2 growing seasons.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he comes to us and says, I want to suppress invasive species,
Yeah.
of course, we would be happy to hear it. People should be able to do that. But anyway,
So anyway,
that's just an administrative matter, so we don't need a motion to continue it, right, or do we? Yeah, I guess we had it on the agenda.
No, actually, what we did was we just gave it an open continuance for him to submit the restoration plan.
Okay.
And normally, we handle the restoration plans administratively. In fact, I had said that to him. I said, normally, it's just handled between myself representing the commission and your representative and yourself, just working out, the fact that the impacted resource area gets returned, or is at least anticipated that it will be put in a condition where it can grow and restore itself to its pre-impact condition, or at least hopefully so.
So, if I understood his request,
I believe he wants to come in and talk to you
on the ninth.
about that, like I said, his concern about
Okay.
what happens in the future.
So, the 9th would be fine for that. It sounds like their plan is all but ready anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just put that on the agenda for the 9th, September 9th.
Yeah.
But I don't think I need a motion.
No, you don't. No, again, because you're right, it is just administrative and it wasn't.
Hunting tree stands. Status, removal of hunting tree stands at Bradstreet Farm and Pingree Farm Conservation Area. Bradstreet Farm one has disappeared, right?
Yes, and of course, the only person I talked to it about.
Was Mr.
So, but
Septic.
there was no trace of it when I went to go out and put the notice on it. And there was still the stand out at Pingree Farm along the Mill River on the Boxford Road side, and I did hang a notice and pictures.
Did you guys see Brent circulated some possible language for this notice, which basically said, there we go. Which I saw and approved. I think Kurt saw it. I'm not sure if everyone saw it.
No, I don't think so.
By law, the Massachusetts, not conservation, wildlife, fish and wildlife, you can't leave them up open.
Yeah, and well, there's that, and there's also that it's on our land.
Yeah.
So that was a problem.
Is your land posted?
Yeah, I think out there it is.
There's a municipal bylaw you may want to acquaint yourself with about
Town of
hunting.
Raleigh closed the hunting except for with landowner's permission.
On municipal property, you need selectmen permission.
Oh, really?
And the selectmen, if it's on property that's under the custody and care of the Conservation Commission, they request the commission's opinion on whether they will. But there is a general bylaw about hunting on municipal property in Raleigh, except for salt marsh lands.
Right, that's right.
Salt marsh lands
Town
are.
doesn't own that much salt marsh.
Well, we've got some. Yeah, we just sold some to Fish and Wildlife, so now it's their problem.
You wanna buy some more?
Yeah, there's plenty of it. Okay, so you put up the notice.
Yep.
Nobody's called, right?
No one's called, and I just figured I'd go there the 1st of September and see if it's either still there or not, and if it's still there, then I'll get someone to help me take it down.
What did we do with the last one of these?
It's still
Put it
down
in the
cellar.
basement, and it's still down there?
Yep.
Downstairs?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sale of surplus town property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's why I'm just waiting to see what the issue is with this, and if we have to, then we'll just advertise both of them to auction them off.
I guess. I would prefer whoever.
Well, what'd you,
The 2 foot.
now what'd you say
Auction
about
at the 375th.
that Fish and Wildlife puts a stand up?
No, you can't even on your own land keep one up 12 months of the year.
Oh,
That's interesting.
oh, that thing's definitely been up more than 12 months, because the tree's starting to grow around the climbing pegs that have a right angle in them.
Yes.
When you twist them in.
Yeah, they hire me to take them down in Bradley Palmer. Yeah,
Ah, okay.
that's all closed on thing, but there's lots of stands down.
In Bradley Palmer, yeah, there's a lot of sort of out of the way spots in that park, yeah, places not too many people go. All right, well, so we'll see, yeah, maybe we'll get, if we have 2 of them, maybe we can price them accordingly.
Money would have to, I've already checked it out, money would have to go into the general fund.
Of course. Well, Town can use it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, I think, unless there's something else. Commission wishes to check in on.
You said our filing fees earlier, go into the general fund, but that's restricted as to it can only be used for, isn't, can only be used for purposes relative to our.
No. Bylaw filing fees have absolutely no restriction on them, and they're not under our care or oversight. They're deposited directly into the general fund.
Okay, well.
Because there was never, well, all I know is that when I first came to town here and saw all these other departments that had their little revolving funds or whatever, I inquired about it and was told that certain people on the finance committee were absolutely dead set that the Conservation Commission would never, ever have a revolving fund. End of sentence. So therefore, I was glad for the job and didn't pursue it.
I think the sense was there are too many revolving funds and we don't want any more of them. They're hard to keep track of and they're sort of unregulated. At least that's what I remember the discussion revolving around.
Wetland Protection Act fees.
Wetlands Protection Act fees are another matter, yes. They go into a dedicated fund that can only be used for administration and enforcement under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Was the Clark School only come under the bylaw? Or
Well,
does it come under the
they paid the state
The WPA.
WPA fee because nobody's exempt from that.
Okay, so, okay,
And
That's
they,
like
and
a
they
few
paid
$100
the
bucks.
town portion.
Right, ours gets expensive because we base it on every square foot.
We have a
of-
square foot impact fee of buffer zone disturbance because
Buffer
we
zone
consider
disturbance,
buffer
exactly.
zone
Right,
a resource area.
so that can really run.
And that's
the money.
meant as a disincentive so that, you know, all the buffer zone isn't quote unquote developed and altered.
But right, but some of these sites, they're all buffer zone, so you get expensive fees.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a criteria that's very site specific.
Right. All right, well, I think we're to the end of our agenda. Is there anything else? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Page.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
We gotta
Judy
And
gave
the
the
motion
key.
carries.
express our appreciation to this young man for sitting through.